Sure.
He's got that. There you go. We are bringing forth to order the Alabama State Board of Education, our work session. Today is Thursday, November 12th, 11. We began at 10:30 immediately following our board meeting. So we just wanted to welcome everybody, and knowing that we are on live streaming, so we just want to welcome everybody who is joining us. So if there's any issues, just please let us know. And we're using our new sound system, so we're hoping everything is working well. It went very well in our board meeting, and it shall continue so. We're going to start with the updates from the state superintendent. He's not quite with us at this time, so we're going to go ahead and go into the, if there's any board members who have any questions, we're just going into item 2 at this time.
I have a question, Madam Vice President, Vice Chair.
Okay, thank you, Dr. Reynolds. If you would just sort of cue me in, excuse me, if you have a question.
We had this presentation several months ago about releasing the Montgomery County school system from State Department of Education oversight. And I think several of us have requested to hold off on that approval until after the vote, which occurred last Tuesday. I'm prepared to have that added to our next agenda, and if there's any need to discuss it at this point in time to move forward, I think that any further delay in that release might encumber the school system.
I'll jump in on that. Y'all started?
Well, we just, yeah.
Yeah, it's good.
We do.
Well, hey, Dr. Reynolds, I apologize. I was with the media, but I'm back in the room now. We'll follow up on that. Hopefully that will be, that's something we can do. I've had some discussions this week with the board president in Montgomery County. I missed a call this morning from the superintendent in Montgomery County, and also talking with some of the community and chamber leadership this week. So we are working on that, and let me follow up with you in a day or two, if I may. And then I will follow up with the rest of the board too on where we are with that. But we certainly appreciate the progress. And as you may know, the community overwhelmingly supported the tax increase for Montgomery County, which will start to be collected in 2023. And so we do feel like things are headed the right direction. They also got a new board member who I think starts just this week, and we'll be sure to meet. I've not met her yet, but we want to meet with her and get her on up to speed too on things. So, yes, sir. I'll follow up very soon today.
Madam Vice President, this is Stephanie Bell.
Yes, Ms. Bell.
I'd like to comment. Yes, Dr. Reynolds, that was a surprise to me that you were planning to mention that. I think it's appropriate to wait and have those discussions. I think that it's too important to just add to an agenda at this point, and we really didn't have an opportunity as a board to discuss it, and we do need to, I do have questions, and other people in my community have questions. It isn't partly in my district, and so I think it is appropriate to wait, and I understand Dr. Matthews' reasoning, and I think it as well is appropriate. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Bell. All right, is there any?
I would just like to commend the staff for the work that they've done with the Montgomery system, and I'm really proud that we were able to get the bill passed. So I'm ready to move on with whatever steps the board wants to take for this system, because they have really proven to answer to the calls of the State Board of Education staff who were indeed overseeing the project. This is Stewart.
Yes, Dr. Stewart, thank you for your input on that. Is there anybody else who wishes to comment about the Montgomery County, Montgomery school system?
And we will put it on a future. We'll have a broader discussion in a future work session too.
Okay. We skipped into number 2.
Excellent.
So is there any other board members that have a question? Okay, Dr. McCarty?
Yes. Dr. Mackey, we had talked about earlier, when we were trying to determine the best test for teachers for reading at the college level. And we had said we would do research this summer on whether the practice was the best test or whether there might be some other test that is the best test. And could you give us a status report on that? I think maybe the literacy task force, Jackie, I know you started on that. You are heavily involved in that as well. And I just wasn't sure. I think we were, planning to have a report, the research done in the summer, and then maybe a report in the fall. And so I'm just curious what the status is.
I can give you a little bit. Are you on that subcommittee with the LTF?
I'm on the intervention.
Okay. So here's where they are. We put out a request for test. There were 3 respondents, I think, but when they reviewed them, felt like one of them was not really what we were looking for. So basically, we're down to 2 tests. The one that we currently have, and the one that was developed by the state of Massachusetts that I can't think of the name of, but it was the other one we talked about at the end of the summer, at the beginning of the summer. So those right now are being reviewed by a subcommittee of the LTF, the Literacy Task Force. And I can't give you the exact, looking around who's in here, the exact date, but it's pretty soon. Mark Dixon and I have had 2 discussions about about that and their process. But so obviously when you've got 2, one's going to come out above the other one. But the key is going to be in the, not like an overall score, but much like with math textbooks, which we'll get to a little later. It's like which one has a better this or that. So when we look at the elements of early learning and what is actually outlined in the Literacy Act, which one of the ones of those tests best aligns. So in other words, it's not that complex. I'm probably making it too complex. But for instance, one of the tests has a much bigger area of comprehension than the other, but it may have less than. I'll just use that example. I'm saying for sure it does. But one has really a big, strong area on comprehension, but it has less on phonemic awareness. So then we have to look at, when comes, we have to discuss, well, which one of those is most important to us that our teachers know when we're testing them. So we will have something. I think their plan is to finish it in December, and then probably would come to the board in January in that work session. But please don't hold me to that timeline because I'm not certain. They're having to do all of their meetings remotely. But unlike with so many other things we vet, since there are only 2 tests that are out there, I mean, it's pretty much, it's A and B and A and B. And so those will come back to us. As far as our folks in the department, what we originally talked about was doing basically 2 separate reviews. But what we've done is merge those together, and Denise Peacock, which y'all have met before, that works here in the department, is just working with Mark and the Literacy Task Force to do basically one review together. It would make sense. When we only had 2 tests, it didn't make sense to us for Denise to do a review and then do a separate review by the LTF. So she's just working with me.
Okay.
And we'll try. I tell you what, at the lunch break, I can probably get a better timeline of where we are on it. But I think their plan was to finish it in December.
Would if we finished in December, and I'm not holding you to that, but if we finished in December, would it be starting for implementation fall 2021? How does that work? And I'm just asking.
Yes,
that was the intent.
I think that's right.
But knowing that we don't know between now and then what ramifications might come, but that is our goal. Okay.
And it is slow. We're behind because this is one of those things we wanted to do over the summer. Our plan was to have something done by August, but I think Dr. Meyer has walked in. Are you listening to this discussion? Do you have something you can add to it?
No, depending upon what test is chosen, there may be a validation process which would take a considerable amount of time. So, schedule that's projected is iffy depending upon what the committee recommends and what the board decides to do.
That makes sense.
But ideally, we would have it for a vote before the board in February. And I say that because y'all, and we'll talk about February a couple of times today, but y'all know February is always, well, not always, but every other year, February is a little bit precarious because we'll have 2 new board members in February. And I hate to ask them to come in and vote on something that's so major their first day, unless we've been able to let them, make sure they're participating in the work session in, December, January. I don't mean at the table, but listening in so they feel comfortable with the topics that have come before them, like their very first day, they're voting on some really big things. But hopefully, we don't see a way, I'll find out. It might could come to you in January for a vote, actually, but that would mean a lot of things having to fall in place really fast.
February makes more sense.
And then, and Jane, I don't know if you're involved with this as well, but I know we had talked about the Barksdale Institute would visit and meet with and research the various colleges of education and just give them advice. And do we know what the timeline is? Have they already visited several? Do
I didn't
they?
even see you over there.
We're waiting
And I'm
on
not
the-
sure who to address with this, but
We're
just
waiting
so,
on the MOA contract. It's going on 3 months now. So of course, with our routing, it always takes time just in general, but then from Dr. Stritchick working and trying to do as much as she can to get it, Barksdale has not gone through a process like ours before, and so when they think they've completed the whatever in stars or this or that, so she's working hand in hand with it. Everything is ready besides the final getting through all those logistics.
So that would be, let me explain what that, so she talks about stars. So we can pick them, do our part, we're done. But they're working for the state of Alabama, and so they have to be listed as a legitimate vendor for the state of Alabama. That doesn't even go through our department. That goes through there's a state purchasing office, the purchasing manager has to approve it. And it's typical that things go back and forth a couple of times when a new vendor is being added to the list. Now, if they've ever been a vendor before, let's say they worked for the Department of Corrections to do a strategic plan 7 years ago, then they have a vendor number and they've been approved by the state, and then but what she's saying is, it's correct. Barksdale's never worked for any state agency in Alabama before, so they are having to go through that whole process of getting a vendor number and get approved for payment. So the process
what's the
should move
projected
forward.
timeline?
What-
Like if they were
when are they planning to
approved
start?
by December 31st, when would we have all of our schools,
Well,
that they would meet with all of them?
Dr. Meyer,
Well, the plan is that they will visit virtually 26 institutions, which is double the number that they dealt with in Mississippi. In Mississippi, they were dealing only with elementary education, and they basically had 3 courses. In Alabama, for the 26 institutions, we have about 180 to 200 courses, and considerably more faculty members involved. So it's going to take a while. They're hiring new folks who are well qualified to do the work, but it's going to take a good bit longer than anticipated. So if they were to begin in January, we're probably talking 12 to 18 months before they can prepare 26 individual reports, which is what they're planning to do, as I understand the draft contract that we're working on with them. So it's not going to be an instant fix, but it's going to be a very well-researched study with valuable information provided to you as board members.
Will we see those reports?
I don't know what the plan is with that in terms of whether we'll get a summary of all the individual reports. I don't remember the details on that.
We'll absolutely have them come back though. And what we probably need to do, this is thinking off the top of my head, but once we can get all this finalized, or even before all purchasing gets the paperwork finalized, we could have Barksdale maybe zoom in to a work session. What if we look at doing that in the next couple of months, possibly next month if they do it in December, and let them talk a little bit more about the process and what they would do. Does that sound like something? I think that would be good. Because I've not had a discussion with them either. They've been talking to them, and I've gotten on the edges of some of those discussions, but I've not been able to actually just sit down and talk with Barksdale folks either. So, okay, so let's add that down.
I've made a note, and Dr. Meyer and Dr. Strichek have done a fabulous job of getting it where we're ready as soon as, but I will add that on.
Well, I know we had talked about it, but I wasn't sure where we were, and I didn't realize that the vendor, the bureaucracy could set us back.
Oh, bureaucracy can do so many things.
Our institutions have
Yes.
been very cooperative in submitting syllabi, in adding courses. In fact, the last two of the 26 to require 9 hours for all of their programs. The delay is because they're having to add a course, and at one institution, permission to add a course to the program has to go to the entire undergraduate, in this case, or graduate curriculum committee for the institution. That committee only meets twice a year, so, but they have been extremely cooperative in providing the information requested.
Excellent. Well, not on this, I'm very pleased.
Well, before you go away from that one, let me say this. So you remember we had 7 programs in the spring, it may have been in April, right when we went into this odd stage, that did not have all of their courses. And that's what Dr. Meyer, so those we will all be cleared soon. Remember, you gave a 1-year approval to them. And so they have to come back to the board in the spring or they'll lose those programs. But they have all done what we've asked them to do, with the exception, I think there's only one that still has to go through its Board of Trustees approval process. But they're in the process of moving along. So all of them will be done. So I just don't want us to think that the Barksdale is a layer we've added on to that.
Right.
We don't want to think, well, we're not going to do anything to improve the teaching and reading in our colleges until for 2 more years. No. And I suspect with Barksdale, people won't wait until the final report's done before they start making changes. They, as the review team's there, can begin thinking, well, why do we shift and what do we do differently? So that's at least our goal.
Right, and I see that too. I see it much more as a mentor, counselor role. Is what I would expect. But, and then, Dr. Mackey, this is a question that I just don't know. The course of study committees, some of that I know is legal constraints. You have to have so many from a congressional district. And then are there also, the governor also appoints some, is that correct? And they are confirmed by the Senate?
That's right.
And so
then there's
they
a third
all,
level.
so when we get our list, like we got this morning for social studies,
Right.
and for also career tech, then we approve those, and those are chosen, they're broken out by a congressional district, and I would assume that we are looking for schools of different sizes, county, city, geography and all that, and different needs as well. And then the governor has, and they are all equal partners, is that right, when they come in and meet and discuss the course of study?
That's correct. And they are, so they're different categories too, and I'll probably get far off showing you that. So like you appoint school people. It's always chaired by a superintendent, and you appoint teachers. Most of them are classroom teachers, and they do have to be representative of every congressional district in the state. Unfortunately, that's also they have to represent each congressional district, but not each board district. But we try to make sure, obviously, that every board district is represented, and as fairly as possible. So some of you may have 3, and somebody else will have 4, but we have to look at representation by congressional district. The governor makes additional appointments which cannot be a teacher. And sometimes we have an issue there because somebody will they'll start the appointments process, going through that with Mr. Moore, and there's actually a whole appointments office, and then a person will change jobs, and they no longer fit in the category where they were originally, planning, and it takes so then people have to be replaced. But those are supposed to be, not supposed to be, they are, but they're community appointees. But she cannot appoint teachers to the committee, so the teachers come from you. And then there is a third level called task force members.
Yes.
And the task force members serve at the discretion of the state superintendent, but those are typically added to fill in expertise gaps. So for instance, when we get in, we get the whole, and in fact, social studies, I think we've identified one of these. So we have, when they put everybody together, they felt like we needed more representation from the Native American community. And so we have been able to appoint some people. I don't know if we even have them yet, but through the task force members, add some people that would represent the Native American community. We try to never appoint many task force members or enough to shift the majority. The majority always comes from the board approved group who are, in theory at least, and I hope in practice, they are the experts because they're the people in the classroom doing the work. And then the people who come from the governor, that's the voice of the community. So they might be business people. We'll tell you, many times they are like retired educators. We've had mayors appointed, just different people who might have an interest in that subject usually. And then the task force members kind of round it out. So there's not, and this is where I'm looking, and why it's Sean, but there's not a set number. Like when you add all those up, like one year the whole group together might be 35, and the next group might be 37, because we felt like we needed this or that balance. But that is how they do.
With the ELA, because I thought, some of these people I don't know, I've never heard of, and then realized that the governor's office approved some, and then it mentioned the task force committee. And I did not realize that we had that. And that's fine that we do, especially to shore up in areas where we need more expertise. But so that's why I just wanted clarification.
And I want to go back to
Let me ask a question on that too. Is there a percentage that comes from the board and from the government? Is it a percentage, or it's just a number that we just come up with, and so these are the ones, and then we're filling the other spaces?
It's not not necessarily a percentage. There is a certain number that comes from the board, though. Is it how many, John?
Justin's gonna break this.
Oh, we got the big black book out. Lord, I have to look at so can't be 20. So there are 23 members. That 4 members from secondary school classrooms and 4 elementary teachers. And of these, one of these 8 members shall be appointed from each of the 7 U.S. congressional districts as constituted on July 1st, 1998, which is another issue because we've had a census since then. But we have to use the congressional districts as they were drawn after the 1990 census. We're not allowed to use the 2000 or 2010 census. And that'll be up to the legislature if they want to use the 2020 congressional districts or if they want to stay with the 1990 congressional districts. But you can see how this gets confusing because, not just for y'all, but for us, because we can't look at what the congressional districts are now. We have to look at the congressional districts as they existed after the 1990 census. And then we go from there. So that's 23 members, and then I could go on and on, but it's going to get complicated. Then the governor appoints 9 members. And those are confirmed by the Senate by April 1st of each year, which is another issue because they start work in February. And so the members the governor appoints continue to serve until confirmation. And there is a chance they can be non-confirmed. So they serve until confirmation. But if they're not confirmed by April 1st, then we lose those people. So we work through that process. I go to the confirmation hearings. The governor's office always sends representation to the confirmation hearings to make sure that those, we usually don't have issues, but we have had issues in the past with confirmation. And then it does state that membership shall be inclusive of all the racial, gender, geographic, urban and rural, and economic diversity of the state. And then it goes on for pages and pages, so. But, I mean, I don't want to read it all to you, but we can discuss it all you want. But that is kind of how it rounds up. And then the task force members those are added in, and those, again, do you know how many we have now?
For the social studies?
For social studies?
It looks like we have 8.
Okay.
Yes, sir, to fill some of those gaps in different, areas of expertise. And these are educators, either secondary or from post-secondary or higher ed.
Well, social studies is so rich because, it has those 4 strands in economics, geography, poli-sci, history. And you want, I think, to have good representation and expertise in all those areas.
Yes, ma'am. And I think a great example, like with the career tech committee that you approved earlier today, in planning for that, we were able to secure a welding teacher to be part of the architecture and construction cluster, which might not meet the letter, that's very specific, teaching that very subject currently, but they find a lot of value in some of the different craft areas that overlap with each other. And so the task force, Dr. Mackey's being able to appoint someone to that allows for that to actually occur. So.
Well, thank you. I was just confused
No.
when I saw some names that I didn't recognize that were unfamiliar to me, and I couldn't remember having voted for them. And so it was just making sure that I understood what the process was.
Absolutely.
So I thank you very much.
Dr. Stewart, Dr. Stewart, did that answer your question? She said yes.
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And last, we had NIHOW speak, remember, Dr. Davis? And then I think the plan was that we would have letters come back and speak at some point. And I know with COVID and everything, some things, have been delayed. But if I could put in a request that at some point, I think, we've had.
Well, I think I think they would love to do that. Even if, now that we seem to have worked out mostly better how to do remote presentations too, if they wanted to do that. But I think that's a great idea. Yeah, because that was on March the 12th.
Was it?
It was. That meeting on March the 12th, and you remember one of the ladies came in and was sniffly. She had been feeling sick. I was in a panic the next day, but nevertheless.
So you got that done about inviting budgets?
Yes, ma'am.
Thank you.
And then the budget process, are we still, last time we talked about the budget, like 2 months ago, it was looking pretty solid for Alabama. Is it still?
It looks great as far as the money available, but let me tell you where we are with our issue with the budget. The money is solid. We did end up the fiscal year 2020 with extra funds in the bank, in the Education Trust Fund. So those will be available. A portion of that goes to the rainy day fund, it's called something else technically. And a portion goes into another permanent fund, but most of it will go into the Advancement in Technology Fund. So that's where your superintendents have definitely gotten used to the A&T, or the Advancement in Technology Fund. If you remember this last year, the legislature, and I know we talked about this a couple of months ago, but the legislature only apportioned half of the A&T fund that was available from 2019. So half of that money is still sitting there. I think, I'm going from notes, and Andy had a report, so I told him, I said, you won't need to come to the work session because there's none of that. But I think it's about $170 million that's left from the 19 money. plus we will have money from the 20 money. So there will be a pretty significant A&T fund for the legislature to distribute. And that's money in the bank that can be distributed immediately if the legislature wants to. They can come in, they can distribute that immediately because it's actually sitting there. As far as the 21 budget, we still anticipate probably 3% growth. Everything that you asked for, we believe there's money there to cover. Not saying that's where it'll all go, but we believe there's money to cover that. All the stuff you asked for nurses and mental health and continuing to expand literacy, the after-school tutoring, the new stipends. We believe the money's there for all of that. Now, the legislature they can be more conservative if they want to, so they can say, well, the projected growth, is 3%, but we're worried about what the economy looks like 18 months from now, and so we're actually just going to budget 2.5% growth. And then if that difference comes in, it rolls into the A&T fund. So just realize, just because I'm saying that our projections are up here, doesn't mean they'll budget it all, because they can be more conservative if they like.
And now is our request with the governor?
So our request is sitting with the governor, and due there by December 1st from all the agencies, but we're already having conversations with them about next year. Now here's where we do have the issue though, and we talked about this. Ms. Crane's over there, she's already asked me this question else this morning. So the way our budget is built is based on the previous year's enrollment. Our enrollment is way down. The numbers, they fluctuate a little bit because they go in and verify each one, but it's going to be over 5,000 students down. And so that's the biggest one-year drop we've ever in modern history. And it's obviously, I think, related to COVID. Some of it might be natural decline. We've had years when we drop 1,000 students or 2,000 students even, but not this kind of significant drop. A large part of that from kindergarten. So the kindergarten enrollment's down about 5%, and the rest of the enrollment appears to be down around between 3 and 5%. And we'll have final numbers. I think final this week. Yes, ma'am.
We're getting the majority of what you're saying, but at some point you're mumbling, and we're not hearing the full sentence. You start loud and then it'll go down. I mean, that's a problem I'm having. Are you having that problem, Dr. Reynolds?
I am.
Okay.
We're keeping our voices
May I ask, what about the other folks? Are you hearing better other parts of the room?
I can hear it now. You're not always speaking.
Well, okay. I need to look up then. That's what I'll do.
I can hear you now too.
Okay, that's
Okay. My apologies. So what I was saying is we're looking at enrollment this year. Enrollment is down. It's going to be down around over 5,000 students. It's down about 5% in kindergarten. So the concern is obviously we don't want to build the FY21 budget based on the 20-day report where we get that official number from 2020, because that would mean what could happen if you think about it. Even if a school is down 45 students, then that means they could lose 3 teacher units. And so then you've got teachers that might get laid off, and then in the fall those students come back, and we need those teachers back in kindergarten or first grade. We don't know, by the way, those kindergartners who are missing, we don't know where they're going to come back. Kindergarten's not a required course. So those mothers and daddies may bring them back next year and say, I want my child to be in first grade. And they may bring them back and want those 6-year-olds to be in kindergarten, but we don't know that yet. We're not allowed to require kindergarten unless the legislature comes back this year and requires it. And I mention that because each of the last 2 years there has been a bill to require kindergarten, but it's never made it to a vote. So we don't know where that'll go. But what we are working on is a funding formula that would basically hold harmless school systems for their loss of students from this year. And it's really complex, and I don't want to go into it right now, but Mr. Craig and I could probably go into it in December but we first have to, obviously, we're working with Kelly Butler, who's the governor's finance director, and we are working with the legislative leadership. I've talked with Senator Orr and Representative Poole already about this funding model and what it would look like. And ultimately, the legislature would have to agree on it. But I think, we've not talked to anybody yet who doesn't feel like this is an unusual year. We don't want to penalize schools who've lost a lot of students. There also may be a shift. So we have this year more students. Now we have, when I say virtual, let me remember there are two ways. So we have students today. I'll go back to the days when Dr. McCarty and I first met each other, and I was principal at Keystone Elementary School. So there are students enrolled at Keystone who are in person. There are students who enrolled there who are virtual. So they're not coming in the building, but they are still enrolled at Keystone Elementary School. And so when we do this enrollment numbers, they're picked up still as members there. But then we have other students who the parents disenrolled them there, and they may have enrolled them in the Alabama Virtual Academy, which is actually based in Eufaula. So they are showing up on Alabama Virtual Academy, Eufaula City Schools. But there's a good likelihood, and I think their numbers this year are up about, it's like 800 or something. But and some of those students may stay in virtual school, but there's a good chance that many of those 800 will go back to Keystone Elementary School next year. So the money, they're in the count, but they're in the count in the wrong place, possibly, because next year they may go back to another school. So we've got to accommodate for that too. But just to make it clear, those students who left the traditional setting and went and enrolled in a full-time virtual school, they're already in the count. So when I say that we're down 5,000 students, that's 5,000 that are just missing. They are not enrolled in a virtual school, online program, in-person instruction. They are just missing from school. Now, some of them may have gone to private school. In fact, I'm sure some of them do. But as we talk with private schools, many of them, their enrollment's down too. So some of them we think, unfortunately, are just not in school this year.
Dr. Mackey, can I interject something at this point?
Yes, Dr. Reynolds, go ahead, please.
Dr. Mackey, while we're discussing these issues, it's related to COVID, and we've received some information about the impact of COVID on the State Department of Education. And we do know in our local area, this local area, we've had impact from COVID, and they are recruiting substitute teachers. Can I have you to give us an overview from your perspective of the impact that we have of COVID in the State Department of Education and in various school systems, both in virtual learning, blended learning, and in-class learning?
Yes, sir. Absolutely. So I'll take those two. In the local schools, they're having serious issues, obviously, in places. We do have school districts that are paying over $140 a day, $20 an hour for substitutes, and still closing their schools because they cannot find substitutes. So I don't think. You talk about market-driven economics, but I'm not sure the market can afford substitutes, because if you can't get a substitute for $140 a day, you're probably not going to be able to get substitute teachers. And there's only so much money available. So what we're seeing is that substitutes are just not available, and so they are, try to look at y'all but speak up. So they're just having to close down. So you probably saw this morning, Alexander City Schools had to close down. I communicating with the superintendent last night via text, and there's just no way. They have a pretty severe outbreak in that community, and all they can do is close down school for a few days. They don't have enough adults to continue to operate school. And so in some cases, and y'all know, Dr. Reynolds, probably you've done this, and I know, again, when I was a principal, if we had like bad cases of the flu and we couldn't get enough subs, one of the things we would do is say 2 classes of first graders, and we'd just stuff them all in one room under one teacher. And so that teacher might have 35 kids for a while. But obviously, when we're trying to do social distancing, that doesn't work well. And so it's a very, there's too many complexities. And so what I hear over and over and over from superintendents is they just don't have any choice but to close down school for a few days. And so that, Dr. Reynolds, I think is the main issue they're seeing. And I'll just be very blunt with you. We think it's going to get a lot worse before it gets better. As we talk to them, as you know, numbers are going up, and especially among adults. Now children, we still don't see, we have a lot of asymptomatic children. We don't see as many serious issues among children, but with adults, there definitely are issues. And once you lose your adults, as I said, then eventually you just can't have school. So we think that even as we go into the winter months, things could get worse, where we have more of these kind of rolling closures. And then you open up again after a couple of weeks, but it may move to a different part of the county. So we see that spiking. There is no plan, by the way, to shut down all the schools statewide again. I've been asked that question every day this week, if we had a plan to close all the schools, particularly at Thanksgiving, and not open back up until sometime in the winter. But that is not something we're discussing. And I don't believe we need to do that, because we do have places where the issue's not hitting. So I was able to go this week and make a last-minute drop-in on some schools where their attendance rate's really high, and they have very little virus outbreak. So why tell them they cannot go to school when they're not having an issue? Now, they may have an issue a month from now at that school, but right now they're not having an issue. So that's our plan. The other part of your question, Dr. Reynolds, and I know Ms. West had a question, I'm not forgetting, but in the department, so we have had an outbreak in the last 2 weeks in the department. I know I've been telling you, letting y'all know as best I can, but to put it in perspective, between March 13th and 11 days ago, we had 12 total cases among employees here. So we did pretty good for 7 months. In those 11 days, we've had 9 or 10 more cases. So we've almost doubled. Many of them came from one section. I'll be careful not to point out, but many of them came from one section. So one person, I don't know who was, but somebody was positive, and then other people who worked around that person became positive. We sent that entire section home. Even the people who didn't test positive, but everybody in that section we sent home. So at one point we had, I think, 42 people on quarantine. We had a completely separate issue day before yesterday, where one person in a department tested, but we sent home every person in that department except for 2 people who fortunately had been out of town, and so they were safe. So that put our quarantine numbers above 50. Now, those first 42, most of them come off quarantine today or tomorrow, because their 2 weeks is up. And so by tomorrow, we'll be back down to only like 8 people under quarantine. But we are concerned, I'm concerned about it, particularly because when we see like a department, a whole section, not a department like the Department of Ed, but a whole section where it begins to go through the section, we could end up in a place where everybody, the whole section has to essentially shut down. Now, they're working from home. That section continued to work from home, but it's not as easy to work from home, obviously, in a lot of the work that we do as it is to be here. There is a chance that we may have to go back. I'm not announcing that we're going to, but we are having contingency plans if we have to go back to maybe half crew or something like we were doing at the first of the summer. It's interesting, just to make a note, that there are many, not 1 or 2, but there are many state departments of education across the country that have been closed since March and are yet to reopen. And they've not gone back to their offices. A lot of my colleagues have not been in their office one time since March. So we think we're doing a pretty good job handling it, but we've also figured out, as you pointed out, Dr. Reynolds, that it takes I mean, it can happen so fast when you go from 1 to 2 to 4 to 8 in a day. And that's what happened to us a couple of weeks ago, is that in one day, all of a sudden we had 8 positive cases. Most of them were asymptomatic, but because the person who sits across from them tested, then they went and got tested, and it turns out they were a carrier, which in some ways is even more scary, because we don't know how many people are asymptomatic that might be, though, carrying it around from place to place. And I'm going to be quiet after this last thing, but just to tell you, we do have a lot of measures in place in the department. For instance, we've asked people simple things like not walking. So that sounded funny the way I said it, but we have a lot of folks that take their break because it's such a big building, and you can make a loop around the building, and they like take their break and they get miles in walking around the building, walking up and down the steps. And so we've asked people many months ago, and they've been really good about it, not to make those kind of walks, because again, if you're an asymptomatic carrier and you're walking around, and I love seeing it, because y'all know I'm a walker, and so when you see really, literally dozens of people during their lunch hour walking circles around the building, chatting with other people that they would not normally see, that's a great thing. But during COVID, we've said, no, we can't do that. So those kinds of things we are doing.
Mrs. Ziegler?
Yes, Ms. Bell?
Mrs. Ziegler. Yes, going back to the subject regarding the course of study committee and the textbook, there was some mention, and I meant to mention it then, regarding the census and basing it on I think you said 1990, but the course of study, if you can send me where it says the course of study committee is based on census figures for a certain year, I would appreciate it, because I think the textbook committee does not necessarily in the way that they redistricted them, but I'm not sure about the course of study committee, but I'd like to have that information, because that is important in terms of the makeup of the committee and what you said. But there is a difference between the two, course of study versus textbook committee. And yes, it is difficult to listen on WebEx. The sound is better if you want to mute your WebEx and then just watch it live streaming. There's a delay, but the sound is much better with the live streaming.
Okay, well,
So
thank you.
anyway, if I can have that information, I sure would appreciate it, because there is, they're not the same, and there is that inconsistency, and I understand what you're referring to, but if we could, you don't have to prove it now, but I do think that, I just want to question that, again, between the textbook committee and the course of study committee, there are differences in the makeup and how it's constituted. But thank you, I apologize for going back, but I did want to address it at that time.
No, that's great, and
Will
we'll
do.
be sure to get that to you as well as all the board members. Thank you, Ms. Bell. Are you done? Can I?
Yes, Ms. West had a question.
Yes, Dr. Mackey, in line with what we've been discussing, if I'm a local school board member, I'll say Eufaula, for instance, because they have had such an increase in virtual student membership. Have we begun to anticipate how this may affect our district's report cards, how that data will be reflected? If I'm a local school board member, I might be having those concerns. Obviously, we don't want this year to negatively impact those districts that are working very hard to serve every child in an environment that they're really not used to, and we've asked them to do that very quickly. And so I'm just wondering if we're having those conversations with the leadership team, and how we expect to proceed as a board.
So those are good questions. So we have only had that discussion with superintendents, and we just began that in October. So the testing, again, we've talked a little bit about testing. It would be our plan right now that we would push forward with our accountability test next May. It'll be the first time we give it. We would use it as a baseline. As I mentioned last month, the U.S. Department of Ed actually sent us a letter saying no waivers would be granted this year. That could change, because we know there's going to be a change in the department, that we know for sure. But then the assessment piece, using it to produce the report cards that would come out in November of 21, is something I think we need to have some serious discussions about. And we would need to talk with the legislature about it. So for the federal piece, what we've been told is that there will be no waiver on accountability for 2021. So we'll give the state test and we will issue report cards. And our ESSA plan, our agreement is that our A2F report card is the report card that we use. But there are going to be a lot of changes at the U.S. Department of Ed in the next few weeks. And so we don't know who the new secretary will be. We don't know what their stance will be on that. But I would imagine they'll have that conversation all over again. If we do it, Ms. West, if we issue the report cards based on this spring's testing, our anticipation is that the grades will go down, and some of them may go down significantly. There's also a concern that some of our remote students may not come and take the test. And I've heard already from some parents who said, I chose for my child to be remote, and I'm not going to bring my child into the building to take the test. And the state standardized test can't be just taken on a computer at home. You've got to come in and sit down for it. So we believe that our participation rates could be low, 70 to 80%. That's what I'm projecting, but I don't have a good scientific basis because we don't know how many students will be remote at that time. But if it were that low, then our statisticians tell us that that's not a high enough participation rate to do report cards. So we'd have a validity problem. More so, we have 13 school districts, or we had 13, that were only doing remote learning. And most of those are small and rural, but obviously if their participation rate might be very different. So if their participation rate in the test was like 10%, then it would be really hard to do something. So we've had that discussion and basically gone this way, that we just are going to have to make some decisions after the first of the year, and need to talk with legislative leadership too about what they want to do, and with the board about what you would want to do with issuing report cards for 2021. Even if we did the test and we say only had 70% participation, but statewide we would still get a pretty good number of looking at our scores and what the cut scores could be. But on an individual basis, it might get much more difficult from system to system.
Dr. Mackey.
Dr.
Dr.
Richardson?
Mackey. Yes, I have a question in line with that. Even if we were to give the assessments, just as we go forward to have as a part of our thought process, the validity, knowing that I know there are schools in some of my school districts who have had to shut down because of COVID-19. Well, the students are not there getting the remote instruction or the in-person instruction. How will we even determine the validity of the test once they are administered? So I think that's something that we really need to consider, because I've had several in certain areas that have shut down a couple of times in my school districts. So I just want to put the validity out there also.
Yes, ma'am.
Even though we assess them and say that we are going to be able to have the participation rate, how valid indeed will the results be relative to the instruction?
Yes,
I
ma'am.
just want to put that out on the table.
So we are, that we have a technical advisory committee, or a TAC, every state does, that they're the ones who actually set those cut scores or make the recommendations at least, and bring those things to us. So we've had, our TAC includes some specialists from out of state, and then people from in-state. We have people from from Auburn and Alabama, both on it. I can't remember. I know most of them, but I better not start naming or I'll forget somebody. But I had a virtual meeting like this with them in September, I think, maybe the end of August, where we talked about some of these issues. They've set up 3 more meetings now over the next several months. So we're meeting in the next few weeks. I think it's early January. We have another meeting set up after that, and then one in April, right as we get into the testing window. And so they are also, just realize they are talking about these issues, the validity question, what they would recommend, those kinds of things. And so we will continue to work with our TAC, and I'll bring you more information as we get more from them. And that's another thing, we could set up a discussion with the TAC, or at least with some of them. The Center for Assessment, which those of you who remember back when we were looking at a new assessment, it's a national think tank based out of, I think, New Hampshire, and they helped us, and they helped pretty much all the states with tests. And so Juan DeBrot, who is a part of the Center for Assessment, he used to be in assessment at the West Virginia State Department of Ed. So Juan is heavily involved in our TAC. Plus we've got Jim McLean, retired professor from UA. I think Dan Henry from Auburn's on there. This is Gloria Mills. So we could get a discussion with them. I think we'd probably need a couple more months, maybe. It might be January or so. In other words, I think we probably need to let them meet at least one more time before we would bring them in for a work session. And you all might want to make a recommendation to the legislature about what you think we should do next year with accountability. I think it would be good for the board to say, hey, this is what we think. We're talking with our TAC. We're hearing from local superintendents. I know the superintendents are very concerned about it. And this is what we would recommend for next year.
Okay,
Dr. Mackey,
thank you.
have we given the ACAP statewide?
No, that will be in May.
So that would be the first time we've ever given it. How do we see, as I recall, and I can't remember the percentages, but the report card, a lot of it seemed to be measured on growth.
Right?
So how do you weight growth?
What's the question? We can't hear.
I'm sorry.
Take your mask down.
It's, and I'm questioning, I'm not sure that I'm accurate, but as I recall, the report card, at least for certain grades, seemed to be, a lot of the weight of the grade on the report card came from growth in your student scores. Well, if we've not ever given it before statewide, how do we have a baseline to measure growth? And then, and I guess how would we, even in a non-COVID world, how would we do that? And then I guess a second question to ponder, and it may not be feasible or possible, is could we still give the ACAP this May, and as many could participate as possible to get a good baseline and work out any kinks that might arise, but then not punish school systems that had extremely low participation rates or other issues. And so that's just thinking out loud.
So no, those are exactly the questions we're asking. Dr. Boyd may be able to help me. So the growth can be done 2 ways. Either one, we could skip it for a year, or we could do a linear regression, and we can use the old test to compare to the new test. It's much more complicated than the statistics I can do.
So in the past, when we went from the ACT Aspire to the Scantron test, we used a statistical method called accurate percentile linking, where we converted one test to another test. So it's sort of like converting kilometers per hour. So it's somewhat. So what we did is basically convert it as a conversion type system, and it's similar to converting kilometers per hour to miles per hour. So there's a conversion factor that you multiply the kilometers to get the equivalent value of miles per hour. So it works the exact same way with the test, and we were able to do the exact same thing when we went from the ACT Aspire to the Scantron. There was very little concern from the school districts that there was a problem with the conversion of those particular scores. So we'll do the exact same thing. So we'll convert the Scantron scores to DRC, a data recognition score, so you're comparing apples to apples in that particular case.
I do think it would be important for the board to make a recommendation. I think that our local school districts and our legislators are counting on us to lead in this area. I think they probably don't even begin, our legislators don't even understand the many challenges our districts have been facing this year. They may from their local board perspective, but they may not have any idea what 3 counties over a district has been dealing with. And I think because we have that state perspective from this department, it would be important for us to make a recommendation to them. Even if they may not follow our recommendation or they may change our recommendation, I think it's incumbent upon us to lead in this regard as we move forward. That's all I want to say about that.
So what we will set up a testing discussion and try to get the TAC, or at least a representative of the TAC. It may be difficult to have all of them, but a representative from that group to answer questions between them and Dr. Boyd to talk through these validity issues and all with you. And as you pointed out, it would have been an issue anyway, switching to a new test. It's much more difficult during COVID. And remember, the test is actually ready. It was supposed to have been given last May, so we're about a year behind because of COVID. I think it would be great if the board did a recommendation to the legislature around assessment and accountability, and this is what we think we need, 2021 needs to look like. I was with secondary principals a couple of days ago, as you know, and their biggest issue is not testing. They actually would like to know where their students are, but it's the accountability piece. We don't, if I've worked really, really, really hard and I've got to be on that report card and I don't want to get a D this year because of all the things that are going on. So I think that is the biggest concern I hear from them, and I'm sure you do too.
Question. When reviewing material on the report cards from the institutions, what effect does it have when the majority of them are like 85% rather than 100% or 95%? What happens as a result of those report cards? Do we send a letter or do we make an overdue review for the state? Does it affect the institution? I'm just wondering, because of just reviewing that material, it did not speak to representing a lot of growth even before the pandemic.
Yes, ma'am. So so the report cards, of course, now in local communities, they're a really big deal, that issue that grade for a school. What we do at the department is a little bit different, because the lowest 5% of schools on the report card under federal law, then they go into what we call OSI or school improvement, and that's under Dr. Boyd. That's the work that Molly Killingsworth was doing before she took federal programs. Melissa Shield, John Hudson, people are working that. So we go into those schools, Dr. Stewart, and do some intensive work to help them get better. And then there is a second level that gets, they get support, but it's not the same level of support. And that's paid for with federal money. And those are TSI schools. And they're schools which have at least one area, so it might be special needs, it might be children on free and reduced lunch, but of the sub-demographics, those broken down groups, they have at least one area that has underperformed compared to the overall average. And so then and that's a much larger group. That can be hundreds of schools because will be one subcategory that underperforms. And so they have to do a plan and they get some level of support, but there's really not, there's not an organizer, there's not federal funds and all to support those schools. The unrelated to the A through F report card is the Alabama Accountability Act. It says that the lowest 5 or 6%, I get myself confused, 6% I think, of schools in reading and math then fall into that category. And that's a little bit different because like when we do the report cards, as been pointed out already, it looks at academic achievement, it looks at growth. It also has a very small weight, but it looks at student attendance in the lower grades, and in the upper grades it looks at graduation rate, whether students are finishing with a college and career-ready credential, those kind of things. But for the Alabama Accountability Act, we can only look at achievement. That's the law. It's the bottom 6% in achievement. And so those lists do not necessarily correlate. Now, there are going to be many schools that are on one and on the other. There's no funds, there are no federal or state funds set aside to do anything special for those schools. So to try to help them get better. So we do try, if they fall on the AAA list, bottom 6% in achievement, and they don't fall on the school improvement list, we do try to incorporate them in some of our things and support them. We don't just leave them out there. But again, many of them overlap. And but that is the biggest as far as what they get from the State Department. It's if they fall in that mid-range and they're a C, then they've got to work on their local plans to get better. But we are focusing on those that score at the bottom range in our support.
Dr. Mackey, as a follow-up to that, because I thank you for bringing up the AAA. If we've got schools now that are on the failing school list and we don't offer the ACAP this spring, they would have no opportunity to move off the failing school list, even though they may be doing fabulous things. And so I guess the morale, I would think, would be hurt. You're working so hard to lift up your kids, and you don't even have a chance to move off. Could we ask for accountability for those schools to give them a chance to move off the fail? Because otherwise, I guess they would just year after year stay on that failing schools list if they don't have an opportunity to prove themselves that they're not in the lowest 6. I mean, my heart goes out to those, because those who have been working so hard and implementing all the good work that Molly and Melissa and their whole team have been doing. And yet, as far as Trish is going to report, they're still on the failing schools list. And so is there maybe some creative but truthful, accurate way for us to measure if they've had improvement so that they are no longer...
I think this is a vital time to leverage that very point. While we're in this pandemic, while we see that there's a need for Wi-Fi and the computers for the schools, I think this is a vital time. I don't know enough to know what we do as far as lobbying legislators or impressing upon them or having a team to really look at these issues. But our children are suffering, and our schools are suffering, our teachers are suffering across the state. Even the schools that are doing well, when you think of the ones that are doing so poorly, it is heartbreaking. And I think this is a poignant time to focus in on that. I think you're making a great point, Tracy.
So, Dr. Mack, if you wish?
Yes, go ahead.
So we applied, in case of all the other states in the union, for a waiver. We received that particular waiver, which means that typically
Yeah,
last
yeah.
year,
They can't hear.
typically last year at this particular point, well, actually it was October the 16th, we received, we sent out report cards to every school system across the state, and the report card had different grades associated to the six performance standards, as Dr. Mackey mentioned, which was of course student achievement, student growth, DL performance, student attendance, graduation rate, and college and career readiness rate. So with this particular waiver, everything is frozen for this particular year, which is why we did not release any report cards for in October or last month. So that means that if you're doing really, really well, then it's frozen. If you weren't doing so well, it's frozen. But to address the concern about the low-performing schools, we've hired 5 new team members to work with Dr. Shields, and the team is doing exceptional work. They're actually meeting with the schools virtually and sitting in the classrooms virtually and giving feedback to the principals and the teachers. They actually had a meeting on Monday and last week, and they were just sharing the good news and some of the concerns that exist with our schools. And Dr. Stewart, we're plenty aware of the fact that the golden rule for instruction is face-to-face instruction. There's no doubt about that. But with the technology that we're using and the training, we feel that we're doing the very best that we can under these particular circumstances. So we have a waiver that's in place. Ms. Martin, Paul Bonner is working on a waiver now to the federal government, and we're going to try to address those particular concerns in the waiver so that we will be able to use the information that we can get and improve teaching and learning. And just because we're concerned about the assessments at the end of the year not being administered back in the spring, our schools still have the opportunity to administer assessments such as the Scantron Achievement Series and the Scantron Performance Series. By assessing the students, and they could actually assess them at home, but by assessing them, this is our test, but by assessing them, they were able to see what slide occurred this past spring and provide maybe remediation activities for those particular students so they can catch up. But there's no question, the golden standard for learning is to have students present and the teachers in front of the student working with those particular students. But we're working with our OSI teams, and as mentioned before, some of the individuals are paid with federal dollars, so we work specifically with those CSI schools, but we do have some that are paid with state funds, so we're able to work with the federal schools list or any school that requests assistance of Dr. Shields and her team.
Well, I guess my point is those failing schools who were failing in the past, but who've made tremendous strides of improvement, they won't be acknowledged, right? They won't be acknowledged as making those strides because until we give a test that shows that their achievement has increased, they are still to the public eye called a failing school. And that's what hurts me, and I think it hurts the morale of those students and those educators that have worked so hard, but they're not given the opportunity to prove themselves.
But last year, they were given an opportunity, and some of them did really, really well. We had 52 of the 61 schools increase. Many of them increased by 20 points on the report card. Keep in mind, no failing schools list has gone out this year. So this year, there's no failing list, and there's no CSI list because everything is frozen. So the ones who did really well in the past, we acknowledged them in one of the board meetings and showed the growth that existed. So they did get their due recognition at that particular point. We're hopeful the work that's being done with the OSI team is going to be really good so that this upcoming October, when we release the list, we'll be able to acknowledge those various schools that you mentioned on the good work that they've done.
And so in the federal, we did get an FAQ from the feds, don't leave yet, just a few weeks ago, that said essentially that under the federal rules, we just continue to serve those. The schools we were serving before, we just continue to serve them another year. And I mean, they made it very clear that they intend for us to give the test in the spring and to identify new schools next summer. But I cannot say enough that we don't know what's going to happen in Washington. I'm anticipating a flurry of memos the last 2 weeks of January. So, the whole thing could shift on us.
Board members, I'm suggesting that we go ahead and go back to item 1 and go ahead and finish A and B before lunch. It'll probably be closer to 12:30. Are y'all amenable to that?
Yes,
That's fine, thank you.
we need to move the agenda.
Thank you. Okay.
Well, item A, is Dr. Sandy Ledwell. Are you gonna sit with her, or she's gonna come up?
She's gonna come
And
up.
let me just say this, if anybody needs some coffee or water, let us refill you, because I'm more excited about this than anything else we discussed today. I mean, there's a lot to discuss, and a lot of these are heavy and big topics, but they have done so much work on AMSTI. As you know, the governor went ahead and appointed the STEM Council this last few months ago, and appointed a chair for that. That's Neil Lamb. Y'all remember Neil, he came and presented. They are beginning to get work underway, and we've had a small meeting with Neil and a group of leaders and Dr. Ledwell a few weeks ago to begin talking about how our work in AMSTI and in the department will fuse in with the bigger work that the STEM councils do. Remember, it's not just K-12, but certainly K-12 is a big part of it. So we wanted her to come and talk to her board. We don't want the STEM council to get the first big good report about what's going on. The board needs to be driving this ship. And so we wanted her to come and talk to you. Just so you know, I think I actually put in the memo there are several people from the department that are representatives on the STEM council. Dr. McCarty represents you as a board member on the council. And so we've got, it's not like they're a separate group out there that we'll have no interaction with. We'll actually have a lot of interaction with them. But Dr. Ledwell, I'm going to turn it to you. I'm going to move around to the side so when they need to see the screen. But I do love our new screens so you can see them no matter which way you look. And then before she starts, the last thing, if I may, I'm gonna flip to number 2 just so we don't end on bad news. But of all the hundreds of local school board members in the state, we are down to only 6. If you look at item 2B, this will be the 1B, I'm sorry, that have not completed their required board training. This is required by the Code of Alabama. And first we had a group of 20 something, and then we went back and worked with them, and some of them had some medical condition or something. But there are 6 that have not only not completed their training, they will not even respond to the official, pretty threatening letter that I sent them, or a letter that AASB had sent them before that. So, as noted in the law, at the December board meeting, during that piece where the governor asked if I have an executive report, we will read their names out. And they will go into the state board minutes forever as being in violation of state law, serving on a local school board and not obeying the requirements of the law for board training. So, I want you to know that, because then some of them might call you, but I mean, there's only so many ways that you can continue to work with. We have, and if people said they couldn't, I mean, we've had people who we've done all kinds of things for them. And Sally Smith at School Boards Association and Susan Salter, we've done things remotely, we've done things by Zoom. We've been over backwards, but these 6 people won't even try to work with us. And so I want to warn you that their names will be publicly read in a board meeting unless they make effort really fast to do something. So that's part B. And with that bad news out of the way, we're going to all good news. Dr. Ledwell.
Thank you for allowing us to be here with you again today. If you'll remember back in March, that very last work session where everything was kind of normal, we were here with you that day as well. So you may remember Mr. Travis Pickens, who is working with our efficiency studies, with the warehousing, and that is one of the things that we're talking about with you today. And then we'll give you some updates about the teacher in residence program. So excited to bring those 2 big changes.
Yes. So yeah, thank you for having me again. Back in March, we had big plans that we wanted to do on the warehousing side for AMSTI. Unfortunately, we were able to make some improvements. COVID did hinder some of those things, but I'm happy to report that we've done a lot of things this summer that are going to help with being more efficient and more cost effective for the whole state and for all of AmSty. So if we could go to the first slide here. So one of the things that we are implementing are accountability actions. So we're going to be doing accountability on our warehouses, with the universities, and then with our sites. So we have these categorized by tiers. So tier 1 is immediate. So as you can see here, tier 1 is intended to be a qualitative screening process. At this tier, the coalition of information, either through site reviews or warehouse evaluations, should be preliminary. So the purpose of these tiers is to determine 2 main points. So 1, whether the site is meeting necessary requirements by the AmSty guidelines, and 2, whether we have to develop a focused plan to get the warehouse to do industry best practices. So we go to the next slide. So, yes, one more time. Yeah. So we have benchmarks, we have measures of how we're going to do these things. So the first measure is the AmSty guidelines. So the guidelines have been in effect, since AmSty has been, created, since it was implemented. But here's where we're really going to hold our sites and the IAGs accountable to those guidelines. So I'm not going to go too specific into the guidelines, but what these guidelines are just a foundation or a baseline of what we expect a warehouse to be and to have. So there's a minimum of square footage for our AmSty warehouses. There's a minimum of special equipment that they need to be set up for success, to be the most efficient that they can be, and then implement these cost standard measures and being safe as well. So one of the things that we're going to be tasked with the guidelines, a special note is, with everything that COVID has brought, we're going to put a lot of safety measures that are going to include, doing things safely as far as, PPE and social distancing and all those things. So just showing that we're very fluid with adding things that are necessary depending on, the time that we're in.
And I'd like to jump in here and tag in and say that we're appreciative of having leadership here in the building that allows us to hold the IAGs responsible for adherence to those guidelines. We're very thankful for that.
Yes. So yeah, that's the first benchmark. So our second benchmark is industry best practices. So if you remember back in March, I was leaning heavily on Lean Six Sigma. So Lean Six Sigma, we can consider that as the industry best practice for us. So, back in March, I mentioned, companies like Walmart and Amazon and FedEx and UPS, they're very successful. And the reason that they are successful is they implement these best practices to become lean and efficient and cost effective the best way they know how. So we're making sure that we're putting these best practices in these accountability measures. So a few things that we can take from these best practices is, safety is very heavily leaned on within Lean Six Sigma. So we have to realize, when we're trying to build the kits or, get kids out to school, get them out to teacher, are we doing it safely? But also, are we doing it efficiently? I guess I'd say that the other way around. Are we doing it efficiently as we can, but doing it as safe as possible? Second thing is standardization. If you remember in the meeting in March, one of the things that we were tasked with is giving the teacher the same experience no matter if they're up in Huntsville or all the way down south in Mobile. We want to make sure that each one of our warehouses are building kits the same way, with the same materials, the same quality. So each teacher gets that same experience and that student gets that same experience when they use those AmSty materials. Next thing is visibility. So I know right now AmSty, we're real data driven right now. So that's not just on the specialists and as I call it, the education side of AmSty. On the business side, on the material side of AmSty, I want to make sure that we have data that is shown, measurable. How fast does it take to build a certain kit? How fast does it take to get a kit from in the warehouse to outside of the warehouse? Just having those data points so we can compare them from site to site to help us implement those best practices that I mentioned. And the biggest thing is continuous improvement. So AmSty, back when it was created, it was known as being revolutionary. We had people from all over the country, all over the world come and visit our AmSty warehouses. to see, you know, what we did. But now we're looking to get back to that. You know, can we have those, you know, other organizations in the U.S. come to AmSty and see the new things that we're implementing? We want to be the Walmarts and the Amazon of, you know, Alabama and education in the country. So that's the first tier of, you know, the accountability measures that we're placing on our sites. All right, so for tier 2, yes,
And one more.
so tier 2 is our ongoing accountability measures. So this is based upon our budgeting process. So right now, well, in the past, you know, with our budgeting, when it came to warehousing, we usually ended up with a surplus, and it wasn't no fault to, you know, to the leadership of our AmSty sites, but when we had a surplus in our budget, we would spend it on materials, just preparing for a demand of teachers to make sure that we had the right materials in our warehouse. So over time, and doing that for many years, we created a large surplus in our warehouse with materials. So this ongoing process, budgeting process is going to be something where we now have to have that communication and that conversation with our warehouse managers and our site directors to plan on getting a good plan on, you know, how many kits do we need to buy for the next year, how many teachers are going to be trained, you know, how many online teaching participants are we going to have. So this whole process is going to help us, hopefully in the long run, spend our money wisely when we're buying kits, and then that surplus can be used to hire more specialists or more field work, you know, so we can touch more teachers and create that demand for more kits. So it's all encompassing. So if the demand is created and we already put these best practices in place of being more efficient, we are better suited to serve the demand of the teachers, the increased demand of teachers. All right. So yeah, that just shows us our budget screening process there. So what we're asking sites to do is to review, plan, forecast, implement, and then evaluate. So we're expecting that from them every year. We will be having evaluations and audits every year to make sure that conversation is happening between the site directors, the warehouse, and with the State Department. And it will be measurable data that we'll have from year to year to see where we can cut costs and put it in other parts of the organization. All right. So the last slide here is the question, you know, these accountability measures that we place on the sites and the warehouses, you know, what happens if they fail to do these accountability measures? So with the support from the State Department, you know, we have a MOA, a contract that goes to the universities every year that they sign for the partnership of having, you know, AmSty as a grant that they receive every year. So we're going to hold them to those expectations of what we expect for our AmSty site. So like I said, with the AmSty guidelines, these accountability measures, leaning on the university to implement these things to help set up for success for the site, so we can create a good, efficient warehouse operation in the state. The goal is to save as much money as we can that way, where we can put more specialists in the field and touch more teachers.
Ms. Caesar,
Yes.
I have some questions, if it's okay.
Sure. Are you ready for questions?
Yes, ma'am. Ready for questions?
Travis, thank you. Dr. Lovell, thank you so much. Travis, Jessica Sanders mentioned at a meeting we had the other day of your stellar background.
Yes, ma'am.
And so I just, you know, thank you so much for coming on board with us and helping us. We really appreciate somebody that has Lean Six Sigma expertise and logistics background that has worked in the corporate world and can bring that expertise to us. So I thank you so much for embracing education. As I think you probably know by now, I am all about the specialist and how can we best allocate those precious tax dollars into more specialists in the field helping our schools and our teachers. And so, with that said, I know that the warehouse study, and I so appreciate that. Are we still on the mindset, because it seemed like we were for a while, that we were looking to consolidate? And it seemed to be that we thought that we could save a considerable amount of money by sort of moving to the Walmart, Amazon model, where you have just a few distribution models over a few distribution warehouses, and then you ship out from there, with shipping costs being much lower and the logistics now that we have being so much more powerful. So in the model that y'all were talking about, I guess I was thinking it was February, but I guess it was March, it seems like we may have shifted from that. But with the model of consolidation, and I'm not saying I don't know what the right number would be, but if we consolidated, could we have long-term savings? Because I realize there might be some upfront costs, but could there be long-term savings? And again, my whole point is to be able to provide our schools, our teachers, especially with the new math course of study. They so need this expertise in the schools, working with those teachers and the local math coaches and more TIRs. I think you know how strongly I believe in those. But I know there's a limit on funds. And so do you see that if we consolidated, that we perhaps could have a long-term cost savings? You're the expert.
Yes, yeah, the answer to that is yes. There would be a long-term cost savings. One of the things that being from the corporate world and not realizing with education, it's not as easy to implement something like that in the education world. There's other variables and other ramifications that come to that.
Travis,
yes.
we can fight those for you. If you propose us, if you give us a recommendation that will save us money long-term on warehouse costs, and then we can adjust and reallocate that money towards those specialists that are so valued and so needed, we'll fight those other battles for you. Right? I mean,
Right.
There probably are, and you can tell me if I'm right or wrong here, but I would suspect that there are indirect costs at our universities. So and I'm not sure why we have warehouses at universities. Whoever said we had to do that? Well, I can say in my county, we've got some empty buildings right now. They would probably almost do it rent-free, and so, and this is, I think I said this to you, Sandy, last time, I don't think as educators we are good negotiators. So when it comes to rent and leases and that sort of thing, I think sometimes we just say yes and check and write the check. And so, do you see what I'm saying?
Yes,
Is I'm
ma'am.
not attacking you at all.
Oh, yeah.
Please don't think
Oh,
that.
no, ma'am.
I'm just trying to, you've got this expertise, and I understand that sometimes it may take a while for a lease to expire, or we may look at the cost benefit and say, well, it's better to go ahead and let this lease run until the termination date. But if we can have long-term savings, I guess it's like, to me, that's just common sense. Why wouldn't we do that?
Right. Well, I will say this, that Sandy has given me, Dr. Letwell has given me the opportunity to start having those conversations. So yeah, in the past, like you said, I know there was a lot of things that weren't negotiated and weren't, put on paper and talked about. So Sandy has given me and will give me the support to start having those conversations. But not with the goal of consolidating, but with the goal to give the university or the site the chance to fix those things to become cost effective as they can in their particular region without the goal of consolidating.
I'm always looking at cost
Yes.
benefit. And like you said, inventory control. Now that we realize, and I don't blame you, I know how government budgets work. It's like you spend it or you lose it. But now that we have a better handle with data management on demand, and maybe we don't need as much space if we monitor our inventory more closely. It's like you said, Walmart with Scantron, they know exactly when the shelf is getting low and when to reorder. Maybe we can implement some of those techniques and we don't need as large of square footage.
Right.
And Tracy, I mean, this is you understand real estate better than anybody, so you would understand like the cost per square foot and leases and all that kind of stuff. So I'm talking out of areas that I don't know much about, but I'm just, it looks to me like an opportunity for us to become leaner
Yes.
and more efficient so that we can pour more dollars into those areas where we have the expertise and we could best help our schools. And so anything you could do to help us in that area, and I think Dr. Level would celebrate that, anything you can do to propose, and if there are some minefields out there, we'll fight them for you, right? We'll take that on, don't you worry about that.
That's definitely good to know, good to hear. I think that's something that we would definitely have to discuss and see, what things we can look into as far as, if that is the goal to get to a certain, where there's, 1 or 3 or 5 or 6 warehouses, anything less than what we have now, I think that's definitely a conversation that we could have.
Yeah, I don't have the magic number, I'll tell you, but you've got the expertise and would know how we can best serve our teachers, right, who then serve our students. And so I think that's the ultimate goal, right, that we want this math and science education, the hands-on, what we do so well with AMSTI. We want to be able to reach more students, more teachers effectively, and especially with math workbook study, coming out.
And speaking of that, we can have other questions with him, or we can move into the teacher in residence, since that's focused on the math portion study specifically. So, Charles, if you would move 2 slides ahead, if you don't mind. Okay, so one more. We were fortunate to be able to receive this amount of funding, $2.7 million in supplemental funding from the last fiscal year's budget. And the language in the ETF or in that supplemental appropriation requested that that funding be used for adding math coaches to the region, adding trainers so that we can specifically improve math through AMSTI training, numbers training, and OGAP training. So what we did, if you'll look on the next slide, is we decided, because of the timing of that appropriation, hiring regional staff was going to be difficult to do, to be able to get teachers out of contracts and whatnot. So what we decided to do was use that funding to put teachers in buildings as sort of like building-based math coaches, in effect, is what we've done. Those teachers are on loan to AMSTI for this year. We used that funding to buy out their contract in essence with the local school district. And we decided to target the limited support 1 math schools. And we, as a side note, AMSTI and ARI under Dr. Strichick's leadership, we are moving in tandem in a lot of areas so that we can use the same language, we can use the same coaching, we can be very similar so that when we either initiative goes into a school or district, the district knows what to expect. So we adopted that limited support 1 language, and what that means is the schools whose data, their aggregated data in the spring of 2019, those were schools that scored between 20% math proficiency and 46% math proficiency, which was the state average that year. We decided that we would put at least one teacher in residence in every region so that we could study the effects of regional approaches there to that, to the coaching, the building-based math coaching, and we used a ratio of sorts to figure out who got 1, who got 2, who got 3, and so on. On the next slide, you'll see a statewide view of where those teachers in residence are. We were able to fund 27 of those TIRs, and we had some regions who had some funding available to be able to use some or hire some additional ones. So we actually have 31 teachers in residence working in schools across the state, and you can see there are 62 schools that are being served and a total of 685 classrooms that are being affected in some way by those teachers in residence. We found out very quickly that it is difficult just to drop someone into a situation where they're a classroom teacher and now they're suddenly going to be coaching teachers and working with adults. So we've also assigned them a mentor, which is one of our regional specialists who have been an AMSI regional specialist for some time. So they know what to do. They know how to go into classrooms. They know how to support teachers. So the mentoring specialists are working with those teachers in residence to be able to bring them along. They had to jump in and get their feet wet really quickly. So we'll talk about a little bit about how we did that in just a minute. But those regional specialists are helping them to support them through that learning. On the next slide, you'll see, it kind of seems like this is not related, but bear with me for just a moment because it is. Last school year, we did a pilot with ETA Hand to Mind. They are a partner with us on our math manipulatives that we provide for teachers in the schools. And they have a product that works on building students' daily math fluency. And what does the building of that math fluency, how does that affect their overall math achievement? The QR code there on the screen will take you to the full report if you're interested in looking at that. But what we found was that across those 20 classrooms for 10 weeks, they implemented this for 10 weeks, the students showed pretty impressive gains, and I've just clipped a couple of the graphs here to show you the gains by gender and the gains for students who had IEPs. There were other subpopulation types of information in the full report. But the reason I inserted this to share with you here is we were excited about the potential of the gains that these students showed after only 10 weeks. So we are working to put this program into all of the teacher and resident schools, into all of the classrooms in every one of those schools. As you can imagine, you saw there were 685 classrooms, so that's quite a heavy lift, and we are working this month to get all of that in place in the schools, along with some training that Hand to Mind is going to provide, and we're hopeful that the teachers will hit the ground running with this fluency program in December. So we'll be tracking that implementation and be able to report to you at the end of the school year what we were able to see in terms of gains with the students' daily math fluency. And on the next slide, this is what we are providing in terms of training and support to those teachers and residents. They have attended a coaching academy, and that coaching academy is built around 3 pillars. That's the research around coaching and what coaching is and what impact it has in the classroom. The second pillar is leadership, and how do you become a teacher leader, and what does that mean when you're a teacher leader in the school. And the final pillar is about content and pedagogy, of course, making sure that they have that mathematics understanding and not just knowing how to multiply and how to divide, but what is the specific pedagogy that you need to know to be able to work with teachers on working with students on how to multiply and how to divide, because there are nuances there, a little bit different in the approach. In addition to that coaching academy, the teachers and residents are supported each month through a coaching community. So they come back together, they talk about successes, they talk about challenges, they look at evidence that they have collected from their coaching cycles that they've been able to do, and they get further new learning in each one of those pillars. As a matter of fact, one of those coaching communities is going on today. I was participating in that this morning before the board meeting started, and it's going very well. All right, next slide. I told you that we are going to measure the effectiveness of that hand-to-mind pilot, but in addition to that, there are a couple of different ways that we're going to look at exactly how having a teacher in residence or a building-based coach, what effect does that have in the school? And one of the ways that we'll do that is on the growth measures from those early, if you'll remember, we have the early reading and math assessment systems that came online this year with 6 total vendors that were on the approved list for literacy and 5 for math. So in our teacher in residence schools, we know which ones of those assessment systems are being used. And my data person here at the department is working closely with those TIRs and with the schools and the vendors to be able to collect that data from the initial test at the beginning of the year. We'll have the winter benchmark coming online here in January, and then of course the end of the year benchmark to be able to project that growth. We're actually hoping that we're able to show some initial numbers, and we start our next legislative report it's due in March, so we'll start that in February, pulling all of that together. We're hopeful that we'll have some preliminary numbers to share in that legislative report in the spring. And then another way that we're looking at effectiveness is through these coaching logs, and you see an example of the results-based coaching tool there on the screen. What this does is if I'm coming into your classroom to work with you in a coaching cycle, then we work together, coach and teacher, to decide what are we going to be working on, what am I trying to improve across this coaching cycle. And we specifically look at which math course of study standards we'll be working on. We'll look at students' initial progress, where they are at the beginning of that coaching cycle. Then we'll collect data across that coaching cycle, and then a summative type of evaluation there at the end of the coaching cycle to see how many students we actually moved from mastery or from not mastery to mastery, with touch points along the way in between. So those are our 2 primary ways for measuring the effectiveness of the TIR program. And that, I believe, the next slide is our last slide. Thank you. We are excited to be able to share these 2 things with you and ask if there are any other questions.
Are there any questions, board members?
I just have a question for clarification.
Go ahead.
In order to get assistance from a teacher in residence, does the school have to be a part of AMSTI? I think I missed that.
That's a great question. I actually did not say that, but no ma'am. We have, and I can share the list with you guys if you're interested in knowing exactly where they are. But as a part of our AMSTI for All approach and moving toward having access to more teachers and more schools, we actually have some TIRs that are in AMSTI schools and some that are not.
Okay, thank you. I'd like to have that list if you don't mind.
Absolutely.
And to all the board
Yes.
members?
I will make sure you get that by the end of the day.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Any other questions, board members?
I just have one, just
All right, Ms. Webb?
for review. So tell me again exactly how many TIRs we have right now.
We have 31.
31, okay, so I did get that. So we initially started with 27,
Yes,
and then we ramped up to 31.
Yes.
And so I see please forgive me, but I see many things through a business model, and this looks like a small business model, so you grow very slowly.
Right.
So
when we assess, do you look at the amount we've invested in these TIRs, literally the monetary amount of investment we've put in, and then the amount of growth that we're showing? Because we may have other programs that do not show this type of growth.
Right.
And so we may want to make a decision to grow this part of our business. I
Yes.
hate to put it
Yes.
that way, but
No,
we
it's
may,
right.
that's how I think. So we may want to, so are you monitoring that? Are you?
Yes, that is part of what we're monitoring. We anticipate, and research shows us that in-classroom coaching, that building-based support, is what's more effective than anything else that you can do. So we will be, yes, we are monitoring.
And I think the reason I really want to see the list is I want to see the schools that are on the list that may be some of our lower performing schools, and see if we can correlate this in classroom coaching and assistance with how they perform, as what, where they're seeing gains.
Yes. All of the schools, almost all of the schools are at the 46% proficiency and below.
Right.
There were 5, I believe was the number, that were just hovering around the 50% mark. So they were slightly above the state average, but not very much.
So they're all between 20 and 46.
All except those 5. That they're 5, and I can give you the specific ones that we categorized. Those were limited support 2 schools that were above the state average, but only slightly, and we chose to go ahead and allow those to have a TIR in those schools because often they completed a district pattern or a feeder pattern, so that we could get some additional data to see how it works if you have an entire district or a school feeder pattern with this type of support.
Okay, good. I'll have lots of questions in the future. I just want to get it clearly in my mind today.
Great,
Thank you.
thank you.
Any other questions?
I've got a thank you.
Oh, sure.
I thank y'all so much.
Thank you.
And I
Thank
thought, the TIRs, when I visited Saks the other day, they were so excited and had the best data board on their students, and were constantly looking at data and formative assessments.
Yes.
And then tailoring the lesson plans and their coaching of the teachers based on the data.
Yes.
And so it was real-time response rate, which was you didn't have to wait for a whole year, right, for ACAP to come about, and then it takes forever to get the results, and then it takes forever to adjust. This was real-time, and it was so exciting. Now, the challenge is, to continue to monitor and assess and improve, and we don't want to grow too fast, but guess what? They're serving 2 schools in the Calhoun County system, and they want one of these TIRs in every school.
Yes.
So what they're doing now is begging for more. They've seen such, and it's a confidence builder. The teacher talks out, I think I want to try this approach because this other one is not working.
Mm-hmm.
And the TIR can talk them through the pros and cons of that approach. And then give them that feedback and that counsel. It has been so positive, so I thank you so much. So all that I'm talking about with warehouses, please don't take offense at that. All I'm trying to do is to free up some funds, so that we can pour more into this hugely successful program. TRs, and again, we have to stay accountable, and we want to continue to review the data, absolutely, and I appreciate so much you're doing. But I want you to see that I'm just trying to support what I'm hearing in the field that they want so much more of. But right now we are limited, right, by our budget. So that's a long way of saying thank you. But thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Ready for break?
Okay, let's go ahead. I have about 12:25. Let's break until 1 o'clock for lunch, please. At the end of the day, I shall.
Oh, thank you so much. And I'm sorry, I couldn't, I was not jumping on you. I was not, it's just that, it was like a really now. And I'm like, wait, what happened? It's like something, but I thank you so much for all you do.
And to respect their time away from their classrooms and their valuable time. And so we will just hold off on items 3 through 8 until after the math textbooks discussion.
That's all right.
Okay, Dr.
So,
Mackey or Dr. Boyd?
I will turn it to Dr. Boyd. So he is in charge of this. We do have some members of the math textbook committee
And thank you for
on
joining
here.
us.
And we'll let you, Dr. Boyd, just let you take off.
Very good. So we have our PowerPoint that Mr. Creel will pull up in a second. And we'll get started. At the point again, I'd like to echo what was just said. Our teachers are truly awesome. They have done an exceptional job of working through this particular process. So kudos to them and all their hard work. Next slide, Mr. Creel. So I just want to share with you the steps in the textbook adoption process. Of course, we've completed almost all except the last step here. So the first one was revision of the math course of study that was done. Publish an invitation to bid, of course that's done. Appointment of the state textbook committee, done. Textbooks reviewed, done by the committee. Public input solicited, done. And our last step is a recommendation to the state board. Initially, we were going to make a recommendation at this particular board meeting, but we decided that we need to do a little bit more work, and we're going to share that with you today. So Ms. Crew, if you go to the next slide, I'm going to share information about the publishing companies who completed a bid package for the math textbooks. So we have 16 different companies here. Our committee members went and worked and looked at all their materials and are already evaluating using 2 performance standards. So the current, next slide please, the current math textbook review form has several different things on it. There were several mathematics textbook review forms that were reviewed prior to selecting a particular process. It was determined that the previous mathematics scoring tool was a strong instrument that captured valuable information, which is what the committee used initially. So in order to meet the needs of the 2020 mathematics textbook review process, the previous two revised reflected on 2 main categories. The main category was the math courses of study. Of course, the course of study contains the content standards, and the content standards is the information that we have as teachers or educators have to convey to the students. And the second component is the student mathematical practice standards, which is associated with the NAEP. We also have additional criteria regarding the content that was used to determine whether or not the textbooks would be a good fit for schools across our state. Next slide, Mr. Creel. So in order to truly understand the process, it's always good to do a comparison. So the current document that we have used has alignment to the mathematics course of study, alignment to the NAEP, and again, comments for certain books. So what we would like to do is we would like to revise the document and have, of course, the first 3 items there, but with the third item, instead of comments for certain books, we want to have comments for every single book. Also, we want to be able to distinguish whether the material, the math material, is a standalone material or if it's supplemental material. And the next category we want to add to this is the rigor and usability of written material. And then the last category will be the coherence and usability of visual material. So you may ask, why are we moving in this particular direction? Well, I've said this to the group, and I'll say it again. The group that has done this work are the best and the brightest in Alabama. There's no doubt about their dedication is second to none. But in some districts, there may not be individuals who have that good understanding of mathematical practices, the courses of study, and how all these different things work. So in order for us to allow our LEAs to make informed decisions, instead of just using the 2 scores that we originally planned to use, which is alignment to the Alabama course of study and alignment to the NAEP, we want to add a few other categories to include supplemental information. Is this a standalone book? Or is this a sole source book, which is a big difference, because sometimes you have standalone books which are really small, but they don't cover the whole content. So it would be really good for an LEA to understand that, hey, this looks really good, but it won't serve my purpose because it's only a supplemental resource. Also, the rigor and usability of written material. Just because it's aligned to the NAEP or it's aligned to the course of study doesn't necessarily mean that it has the rigor that's needed, or the fact that it's used.
Pardon me, Doctor. You cannot hear on WebEx.
Okay.
It's muffled at best.
She said it was muffled at best on WebEx.
WebEx.
Thank you.
Maybe try speaking up, seeing.
Okay, can you hear me now?
Open.
Ms. Bell, is this better?
There's a 30-second delay. So.
Yes, I can hear you, Dr. Richardson.
Okay.
But I think she's on live streaming, right?
Right.
Yeah. And from what I understand, it's better on live streaming than it is on web.
I can hear you too, but I don't know.
Okay. I'll speak a little louder.
I mean, I don't know if that's.
There's the microphone out there, see up the ceiling.
Sure.
Ms. Bell, be sure to let us know if it becomes clearer, please.
So I thank you. I listen, the audio part on live streaming because it is better, but WebEx is not. It's, as I said, muffled at times, and you can hear a little bit at other times, but it's just not ideal.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, I'm a little closer to the mic, Ms. Bell. This may help. So in this particular slide, we're looking at the comparison of what our current work or scoring guide has as compared to where we plan to go with this. And the revised document still will have the alignment, the textbook alignment to the Alabama course of study. Also, we will have alignment to the NAEP standards, comments, not for certain books, but for all books, and supplemental information. When I say supplemental information, I mean whether or not this resource is will be used as a supplemental resource or whether it's a standalone sole source document. And also the rigor and usability of written material. Very important for a school district to know this. And also because COVID and we're living in a digital age, many of our schools are using digital material. That being said, it's going to be important to have a score regarding the coherence and the usability of the digital information. So having all of this information will give an LEA a considerable amount of information about whether this is a good resource or not so good resource. So, and as I stated before, this is really important for the resources because many of them, some of them may not have the time, the energy, or the personnel to be able to look at the list of textbooks in a way that they can discern what's good quality and what's not good quality. So once we have this, we'll be able to report 4 different scores to the LEAs and comments, which will help them drive the direction. So the comments is qualitative information that may say this is an excellent resource, however, blank, blank, blank. Or this book does not cover fractions as well as it should. Some of those types of comments which will help our LEAs tremendously. So using all of that, we could then categorize the textbook or the resources in 3 different categories. We hadn't decided on the names yet, but we may have the top tier, a first tier, second tier, and third tier. Meaning the top tier will be the books that have scored the highest scores, or had the highest scores, and then the middle tier and then the lower tiers. And with the lower tiers, meaning that those are weak resources. And then the districts at that point can make an informed decision on what is best for the students in that particular area. So this is a comparison there, but the individuals who deal with this on a daily basis and have taken the time and the energy to go through all of these books are online at this particular point. Ms. Becky Boykin has done an exceptional job leading the committee, and I'll turn it over to her and allow her to introduce her team members. Ms. Boykin?
guys doing?
Doing well.
Thank you for having us on here and for allowing us to be a part of this process today. Online with me, I have Marissa Benjamin, Bianca Gaither, Lee Twig, and Bonnie Jakes. And I think they're each going to tell you a little bit about our situations that we are in currently that have to do with the move forward of the textbook adoption. And I'll go ahead and speak first, and I'll move to Bianca Gaither from Jefferson County School System to be able to speak next. First of all, I do want to thank you guys for making this to be such an important decision in our state. I applaud all of you for in this process in high regard, and I appreciate you letting and allowing us to be a part of this as teachers in this state. At this point right now, many of the districts in our state have started an adoption process, and the teachers that are on this panel today with me are going to discuss the various problems they've encountered so far regarding the adoption process. I'll speak specifically for middle schools. As you know, the new curriculum is different for 7th grade, and we have 2 new courses of 7th grade advanced and 8th grade advanced. The availability of workshops that were available online for all of the teachers in Alabama consisted of having about 1 workshop that had a max of 37 openings for teachers for the entire state. Therefore, I think that having the materials in those hands of our teachers at all grade levels, and I'll speak to specifically middle school, is imperative to be able to effectively train those teachers in the courses of study for the 7th grade advanced and the 8th grade advanced classes. So the quicker that we can get our materials into the teachers at our local LEAs, I think the better it will be for implementation this fall. Bianca, I'll turn it over to you to speak about what Jefferson County is going through at this time.
Good afternoon. I just want to echo what Becky said. Thank you for having us and giving us this platform to speak. So I am at Jefferson County Schools, which is, as you know, the 2nd largest district in our state. And because we are so large, our process does take quite a bit of time. We have 32 teachers, and my technical committee consists of 32 representatives from those schools, along with one of our board members, parents, our EM person, and our ex-ed. And so the process is quite lengthy because we do listen to presentations from all of the publishers that we have listed, and also our facilitators take that back to their schools. And they have meetings to give updates on all of the textbooks that we have, and they review those, and every grade level does a rubric per school, so that we can kind of look at the quality of the lessons. They have a rubric that they do have to fill out for us, and then from that process, we actually disaggregate the data, and we choose our top 3, and then it goes back to the schools, and they rank the order of what they like from the least to greatest. So it's a very hands-on process. We make sure that they look for that rigorous content that matches the standards. But with it being 32 people on the committee, it does take quite a bit of time. And for us, the urgency is we're still using a very outdated textbook series that has actually come out with new editions. And so our teachers right now, if they're just using the textbooks, then they are not meeting our standards right now, and they're using outdated materials. So it is very vital to us that we can get quality materials in the hands of our teachers.
Hi, good afternoon. My name is Marissa Tate. Becky and I have known each other for a long time, and so she introduced me as Marissa Benjamin, which was my maiden name, so don't be confused by that. My name is Marissa Tate, and I'm a math coach in Hoover City Schools. I'm a building-based math coach. But I represent Hoover City Schools on the committee, and I would like to echo exactly what Bianca said, that we are, while not as large as Jefferson County is, we are actually feeling the burden. The teachers in my building are
feeling the burden of not having a curriculum because of some leadership decisions made in our district in 2010. We adopted early, and so we are using a program that's 10 years old. Therefore, the math coaches have had to put together a curriculum for the teachers. And while I like to think I am well versed in what's going on, I'm not a curriculum writer. And so our teachers are really hungry for the ability to have a curriculum that's, of course, standards-based, but that is reliable and would help them have the ability to get good math instruction to our students. So again, just we're in the same boat. We'd like to be able to start the process and listen to the presentations at a district level. Of course, I've heard them from the state level, but the people in our district, teachers and leaders, would like to get the process started. So we're looking forward to moving in that direction.
Hello, I'm Lee Twig with Calhoun County Schools, and thank you for the opportunity to speak with you today. I'm going to echo what Bianca and Marissa said. Really need this process to get going at a local level so that we can get these materials in the hands of teachers. It's a long process for us at a local level because we have to go through a very similar process that we've gone through at the state level. And really rate these textbooks and what's going to meet the needs for our students. And also, one thing we haven't discussed is the amount of professional learning that has to take place when we do get a new curriculum. So anything that we can do to get this process rolling so that we can move forward in our own districts would be so helpful. None of these products are a perfect program tied up in a bow. And so we really need time to align to our standards which of these textbooks are really meeting the needs of our standards, or are we going to have to look elsewhere? And so I just urge you to move this on so that we can move ahead in our own districts. And thank you for your time.
Ms. Gates? Ms. Barton?
What? You know Bonnie's.
Yes.
Yeah, she wasn't there earlier.
Are you able to hear me now?
Well, you're in a well.
Oh, hey, Chloe.
Okay, how about that?
Oh, perfect.
Good.
So sorry, I tested my audio and my video, and then I kept trying to jump in, and nobody could hear me. So I'm so sorry. I'm on my cell phone at this point. I just wanted to echo what Bianca had said. I'm the only member of the five of us from high school level, and there have been some major changes in the course of study at the high school level, including, courses going in different orders and just a spectacularly different set of standards for several of our courses. And it's vitally important that we can get these resources into the hands of our teachers as soon as possible, particularly for those courses that have substantially changed, particularly for courses that are brand spanking new. I know there was some concern about the lack of rejection of any of our textbook materials that we reviewed, and I wanted to speak to that from the high school level, that one of the new courses actually didn't have any materials submitted at all, and then the other only had 2 textbooks, and both of them lacked about 50% of the standards being covered. However, the textbook committee felt strongly at the high school level not to reject those books because that's going to put your LEAs in the position of having to build those courses from the ground up. So rather than, starting with half of the materials to be able to pull from, starting with 0 of the materials to be able to pull from. And we just honestly felt like it would be better that the LEAs had something, even if you categorize it as a supplemental resource, had something from which to pull to get started, because those are brand new courses with a whole new set of standards.
our training as far as this past year was also very limited, because of just the virtual caps and things like that. And we have started implementing the pieces of the new course of study that we were able to implement this year, but just like the other ladies have stated, I mean, the last time that we adopted, I was pregnant with my daughter, and now she's 8. So it's been a minute, and we're using outdoor dated resources and doing the best we can, but honestly, we really need new materials.
Thank you. So here's,
Are there any questions that we are able to answer at this time, or are we going to go on with the timeline?
let's go with the timeline first, Ms. Boykin, and then we'll take the questions. So on the slide here, on the screen rather, we have the timeline here. Mid-November, we'll make the modifications that were discussed a few slides ago. In late November, our committee will reconvene. In December, the committee finalizes the proposed recommendations. And in January, the recommendations will be presented to the board with the hopes that the board would approve the recommendations made by the committee. In February, the State Department sent out communication regarding this textbook adoption. This will go out to all the LEAs. And in April of 2021, the LEA completed the local adoption process and began the purchasing of the materials, so they will have it ready during the summer so they can start the school year with all their math textbooks in place. Any questions at this time?
Sure. Let me say 2 things on what Dr. Boyd, on top of what he said. First, let me start by saying I appreciate very much that he's really jumped into this process and met with these ladies over and over, and to help us, make sure we fully understand where we are. And certainly these ladies and all the others on the textbook committee, you've just done a masterful job. And we're all trying to understand, every person I've talked to, including the board members and other people in the field, they just want to make sure we get the very best materials for our students. So we all understand that. The timeline, Dr. Boyd and I had some discussion on the timeline this week, and so that's why I want to draw attention to this, because this is on me. They kind of laid out a process that would take us to February to do a vote, and then immediately turn around and get something to the districts. My big concern with that, as I expressed to Dr. Boyd, but I think this is worth talking about, is that again, we will have 2 new board members that won't have had the benefit of all these discussions coming in February. And so, plus, my second item was, just trying to, as quickly as we can, get it to the districts. Now, there is a little bit of jeopardy that you need to know about, I think. So, if the textbook committee comes back and they do this much more extensive list that you'll see, and not just the rankings, but this other information, then that would come to you, as he says here, in December. If the list is the same and it's just more extensive in information, but it's the same books, then that's fine. If we publish a new list, so if we get to the point where we say we're actually going to change the list and remove some books, we can't add because we can't do the bid process, then what the law says that the list that the board's considering has to be published for 30 days. Now, we published the whole big list, but there is some concern among the legal folks that if we were to change the list and take some books off, that we have to publish that new list for 30 days, which means that we might end up having to have a call board meeting in late January, because you have to have 30 days. I have to look and see, but I don't think there are technically 30 days between the December work session and the January meeting. I could look back and make sure, but I did check that once, and it seems like there's not. So we might either have to have a call meeting or just push it to February. Then the only problem with February, I just want everybody to think about that up front, would be making sure our 2 new board members either felt comfortable because they've not been in the discussion, or they might say, hey, we'll just sit this out. Again, as I said earlier, there's a chance these people can come in, these 2 new ladies, their very first meeting, have a couple of really big items on the table. Now, I've talked to both of them. They are committed, they're excited about service, and so I think they would even come in and do the homework to be caught up. It's not about that. It's just, being a part of the process. But anyway, those are two things I just want to throw out there for us to talk about. And then the questions, these ladies have, they have the answers if y'all got questions for them. About the process, about the books, about the scoring, any of that. And I don't know, Charles, is there a way now that we can make them the whole screen since we finished with the slides?
Through the side?
Are we, Dr. Boyd? Is
We
there
are,
a slide?
yes, we are through with the slides.
Okay.
And Dr. Rank, there's actually a little more than 30 days between December and the January board meeting.
Okay, good. So we would make that 30-day
Yes, sir.
window. That's great.
And did Jeff and Dr.
Thank you for looking at that.
Did Wayne and
I can appreciate the report from everyone, and it sounds wonderful that we have a committee very qualified. I'm concerned that so many people are questioning the textbooks committee, and hearing you today, you don't sound as certain as I thought the textbook committee would sound about the resources that you have available to you, the books that you're studying. So maybe I'm expecting something ahead of time. But it just from hearing you and hearing the constituents in the community question the choice of books that are on the list. I mean, I'm getting calls from everywhere. And to a point that I decided something is wrong. Somebody is motivating this group of people. Why are they just calling all the time? But hearing you today, it sounds like you too are not certain, or that you don't feel strongly about the books that you are recommending. Am I hearing you right?
Ms. Boykin, did you hear the question?
I believe that, for my own sake, I feel very confident about the list of choices that we have for middle school and for elementary, and Bonnie can speak to the high school. As far as my district, I already know that the textbooks that I would like to see move forward and placed on our consideration list. I know we have all looked through every single textbook that's on this list. We know what we like about it. We know what we don't like about it. We are able to speak to where the textbook is strong, where the textbook is weak, where we do have concerns about the standards, and where we may need to have extra ongoing training for those teachers for certain standards that were changed that appear in a different manner in the textbook. However, saying that, I know that with the textbook options that we were given for my top 5, I feel very confidently in how they address our standards.
Yes, that's my feeling as well. I think that the concerns that we had are not about the items that we reviewed, they're about the items that we are currently using that we adopted in the last round of textbook adoptions. What we are saying is that those items are inadequate for this new course of study, and we desperately need to be able to go ahead with these new textbook adoptions so that we can have materials that have been evaluated according to these new guidelines that we are to be following. We have had some great books submitted. Those 2 new courses that I spoke of, that finite and then the math modeling, those courses are a very different kind of collection of material, of standards, and LEAs are going to have to work some on those courses. But going back to the drawing board at the high school level, it is not going to make a substantial difference in terms of what you see as a result of our ratings coming out, because most of the materials that we reviewed
performed very well for the course of study standards and for the math practice standards. So I think our concern is that we want to be permitted to move forward with this as quickly as possible so that we can have these materials that we are very excited about available to the local education association.
May I ask a question?
Yes, sure.
I think is it Dr. Stewart that just asked that last comment? What is it that you're hearing people say about the list? I'm just curious what their comments are.
What comes to mind is, can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes.
What comes to mind is that there is a standard that requires that these books in math, for example, require all the children to learn at the same pace, that they have to be on the same timeline. And I just know as an educator that that's not reasonable, but that was one of the concerns. But here, with your introductions and looking at the material, you are qualified, and I was resting on that, but when I heard the comments today, I think that's something that led me to hear you say that you're not certain about this material, but I must have heard it wrong, because I think it was Ms. Twigg when she was speaking, that I picked that up, and then I started hearing it from others. But if you're saying what Ms. Jackie just said, then I heard it wrong, because I was confident in reading the material and looking at your meeting that we have a sound committee, and we have a committee to do the work and the research and to vet it out. Then I was satisfied. I couldn't understand why people were calling. I kept going back till I almost know you all, because I kept going back to your information. But then when I heard you there, I don't know whether my mind was clouded with what I was hearing. I thought I heard something different, but I'm so relieved to know that you're saying, let's move forward with where we are.
Yeah, so I am like I said, I'm a building-based math coach, but I'm also a national trainer for OGAP that was mentioned earlier with the AMSTI program. And one of the things that I tell people across the nation when I train their teachers is that a textbook is only as good as the teacher who's teaching it. And so one thing that from a perspective of a district perspective, but also from a trainer perspective, is that teachers are going to have the training to use these materials, whatever materials they choose. And when they have the training to use the materials, they can then make the choice from a lesson about whether or not this is good for all, if this lesson might be catered to a certain small group, or if I need to scaffold this lesson for specific students in the classroom. So I think as far as textbook goes, the list that we have, I think I would echo what Becky said, that and Ms. Bonnie Jakes, that we probably we should move forward. We have a good list of materials for LEAs to choose from. But I do think in our state, I'm just gonna get on my soapbox for a second, but I do think in our state, our teachers need training in mathematics and how to educate students in mathematics, and I think we're on a good path with that, as I heard from the AMSTI group, but I would hate for people to think that a math program one program written by a publisher or by a few people is going to cover educating a whole classroom without adding or subtracting anything. They're going to have to make decisions based on formative assessment. They're going to have to make decisions based on the students who sit in front of them, whether that's behind a computer or in-person instruction. I just feel really strongly that if that is what people are worried about in your district, I would I feel very comfortable saying that the programs that we have to offer are good programs, and the teachers are going to have to be trained in those programs in order to be able to be a good user of the program.
Mrs. Ziegler, I have a question I'd like to ask.
Go ahead, Ms. Bell.
Yes, there has been mention of changes since the last textbook adoption and the need to adopt these textbooks because of those changes. If they could be more, if they could describe those changes and the need because of those changes, I would like to know specifically what they're referring to. I understand some changes in the, of course, high school level, but as far as the overall changes and the need to adopt the new textbooks because of those changes, I would appreciate more explanation.
Sure.
Ladies?
Bianca has a.
Okay, I can start. So the current textbooks that we're using now, we got when there was a huge shift in the way mathematics was taught. And at that time, there was really only one textbook series that was looking at this conceptual to abstract approach. And so I think a lot of us adopted that textbook because it was the only option out there. And so as more publishers have moved along with us in this shift, in this change of thinking and going from conceptual to abstract, there's been more options put out there. We've also increased the rigor in our teaching in the classrooms. And so the textbooks have started to change and kind of come along with us in this change of best practices in teaching. And so we literally have adopted something that was right when we were on the edge of moving to these best practices and how to teach. And so those materials are outdated and they don't have the rigor that we need. They also don't address our new course of study. They address our old standards. And so we do need to kind of make a shift so that we can match what we're saying. This is what we want you to accomplish in your grade level. Here's the resource to be able to do that. So that's kind of what the biggest changes have been. It's just moving to best practices and making sure that we're covering the standards in each grade level that the state has put into place.
I think at the high school level as well, the rigor has been increased with this new adoption of these standards. And when I say that standards are different and that they've kind of moved around, when we evaluated, say, an Algebra 1 textbook prior to this study, that was based on standards that were intended to come prior to geometry. Well, now geometry comes prior to algebra, and so standards in algebra have changed based on the order of courses and to increase the rigor and that kind of thing. I mean, we adopted two different textbooks, one for a standard Algebra 1 and one for an advanced Algebra 1. Well, that's not really applicable now based on the new course of study. And so it just amounts to the fact that although, math is math, the way that we've gone about teaching it has undergone a substantial change. The order that we're teaching the standards, the order that we're teaching the courses, and we just haven't evaluated our current resources based on those new requirements. And so the books that we have now, we don't know fully if they even have all of the material in them that we are being required to teach in each of these courses, because we just haven't evaluated. Teachers are having to do that as they go at this point, which is a little bit dangerous. So,
also, because the previous textbook adoption was for my district 10 years ago, when I was still a classroom teacher, the consumable resources have run out. So what's happening in our district is, yes, there were changes, but also we don't have the consumables anymore. So, and the contract has run out with Pearson, who we bought, and so we don't even have their online program anymore that we can print the resources. So our teachers are either having to go to an old resource and make copies. And I work in Hoover City Schools. I'm not talking about one of the more rural districts. I'm talking about a pretty suburban district who we're having to make copies. We're having to pull resources and put together best practice lessons because, again, it's a more than 10-year-old resource that was adopted
as we were getting the college and career ready standards of I believe it was 2010. So, I mean, some of what was given to us as, in order to align to the Alabama course of study at that time, was inserts for these books. So, I mean, it's just, that's what happens over time, is these publishers keep writing resources. There are resources that will come out next year that will be better than the resources we have currently. So, I mean, resources change, and old resources become old resources, just like any textbook would get old, and is the validity of the problems, the things that are happening. I mean, we want those to be relevant problems for kids in today's society and what's happening. So those are all the kinds of changes that we're talking about as we discuss changes, but also the urgency of needing to get this list out to districts. Ms. Bell, I hope that answers your question. And
Can I
read it? Okay, I'm sorry.
Dr. Richardson, were you asking a question or?
Dr. Reynolds.
Wade Reynolds was
Oh, I'm sorry, Dr. Reynolds?
It seems that the focus is now on, do we adopt the new textbooks or in comparing to the old list? My concern is the quality of the list that we've been presented. I see the evaluation of the textbook, and someone, I think your board made a comment about most of the people, most of the list are appropriate. I'm not interested in most. I'm interested in a comprehensive function where we present books that we're willing to spend Alabama textbook money, and we're willing to put in children's hands, whether it's Limestone or Madison or anything else in my district age that are quality. My concern is some of the textbooks that were forwarded for us for adoption were not rated very, very well. I would like to, I served on a previous curriculum committee and textbook committee, and our foundation was to present books that we felt nobody would be presented a book to adopt that wasn't high quality. And if the textbook committee is going to not do that, I will support the recommendation of the textbook committee. I want the textbook committee to come up with just the highest quality books, and only those to put in the hands of our students and our teachers and our curriculum people.
Dr. Boyd, I have a question.
Yes.
Go ahead.
I realize what the committee has said. In the past, we looked at the alignment of the course of study and alignment to the NAEP. But I wanted to make sure that we are getting the best of textbooks. You're all now looking at 2 more categories. I heard several of the committee members talk about the rigor and usability, and then the coherence and usability, because now we have many school districts that are using virtual platforms or Chromebooks. But I guess the question is, of all the books you have on the list, is it correct to say that all of them rated one way or the other?
Repeat the last part of the question.
Is that accurate to say, Dr. Boyd, or anyone on the committee? I know there were a lot of books on the list, but as committee members, were you given the task of having to evaluate all of the books? Because what I heard Dr. Boyd say is that you all were going to look maybe at tier 1, which would be the highest, tier 2, which would be the middle, and then tier 3, which would be the lowest. So I guess my question is in line with what Dr. Reynolds was saying, that he wanted just the top books. My question is, was it not you all's task to rate all of the books? I'm just trying to understand the process.
Yes, that is correct, Dr. Richardson.
Okay, so your task was to rate all of the books that were on the list, correct?
Correct.
Okay. So by going back, looking at tier 1, which would be the highest, tier 2, the middle, and tier 3, the lowest, that would get us to that point, correct?
It would be. So a school district would want to select something from tier 1, possibly tier 2, and probably none from tier 3. That is correct.
All right, okay, thank you.
Mr. Boyd, can I speak to that for just a second?
Sure.
I think that there's a danger in that at the high school level because of that budget task force. Most of our resources, in fact, I think all of them are going to score, continue to score at the tier 2 level. Those finite books, you know, I full disclosure will tell you that half of standards for finite are missing from those books. However, given that they are the only 2 books that were submitted, I'm really hesitant to pull those off. Change them to a supplemental resource if you like. But what we're trying to do, to my understanding right now, is to make this LEA proof, you know, to try and give enough information to the LEAs that even if they really don't do their due diligence on these textbook committees, on these local textbook committees, they're still going to pick a resource that is excellent. And I get that, I really do. However, if you go too far down that path and you eliminate those 2 books, you are now suggesting that LEAs that may not do their due diligence on textbooks now have that course from the ground up with nothing to go on, and every district in the state is going to have to reinvent the wheel to do that. So my hesitation on that is that when you remove those 2 books because they scored low, you're not leaving any other options for teachers of that course. So you have to be really about making that generalization across the board.
Right, but Ms. Jakes, the book wouldn't be removed off the list. It would just classified in a different tier. And what you just said could be stated in the comments category, so that would help. The scoring guide or the scores that we get for each category, there are 4 different categories, is quantitative value. But for the districts to really have a good understanding, it's going to take qualitative information. So what you just eloquently said, put in words and comments, will offer a considerable amount of insight to the districts, so they know that with finite math, even though this is not the greatest textbook in the world, it's the only choice I have, so I'm going to use this book.
For sure. My concern was just that Dr. Reynolds had indicated that sources to be at the utmost quality, and that's a little ambiguous.
I don't want the level 3 books to be approved and anybody to spend money on it. Let me be very clear about what I mean about quality.
This is Jeff Newman, may I speak?
Go ahead, Mr. Newman.
You know, I understand Wayne's point on this and being a local superintendent. You know, because I always, you know, when we get a book list that's already been adopted by the state Board of Education, recommended by the superintendent, and gone through the vetting process, it's kind of an assumption that when you get that list, they've been vetted and they cover everything you need to at the local level. I mean, you know, that's what I've always thought. You know, and I see Wayne's point on that. You know, because if you think about it, and if you get that list down at the local levels, you're thinking that they've been vetted and they cover that course of study and the standards and every one of those, so they wouldn't send it down to you. I see Wayne's point in that, or either that needs to be communicated very well to adopt from the upper level tier. Because it's not, you know, and this has nothing to do with the committee, and I appreciate everything they've done and everything at the State Department level and all. But when it comes from the State Department to those local levels, there's kind of an assumption there that it's already been vetted. It's you know, you adopt a book and you get 2/3 into the year and you see your teachers start realizing, well, these standards are not being covered in this. I mean, you know, and you can say that's a local vetting thing, but on the other hand, I think it should be identified before it comes to the local level that not all standards are covered in this particular textbook, or some kind of identification before it gets there.
And Lady, I want to say, Jeff, when somebody mentions it depends on how effective the LEA does in vetting the textbooks, as a local superintendent, and my expectation is the textbook committee at the state level and the state board of education and the state superintendent do the vetting for us. And if you're going to say that it's the responsibility of the LEA to do the vetting, then what's the function and what is the role and the responsibility of the state textbook committee and the state board of education?
Right, I understand. That's kind of what I'm saying too, Wayne.
We're saying the same thing, yeah.
I I understand that, yeah.
So,
I agree. This is Stephanie Bell. I agree with the comments that have been made by Mr. Newman and Dr. Reynolds. For all the reasons they've already stated. I am concerned, especially if it's been mentioned, as has been mentioned, that you have textbooks that teachers, especially newer teachers, rely on, and they're already deficient in teaching subject matter, and as mentioned, and I just think that we need to be very careful, and we're looking at a big climb in terms of all of the NAEP assessments and other measures used to compare states. That's not the reason for looking at the quality, and but certainly is a good reason. But I do appreciate, as has been stated, the work of the committee, and I do understand that you can only approve what is submitted to you. I would think that there are better texts that just were not submitted, unfortunately.
so I have a question then to the three of you that have asked these great questions. Do you have a recommendation, or what do you think should be done as a result of your thoughts? Are you suggesting that we should go back to the drawing board and hear from more textbook companies, or are you, what do you think?
That's not a decision for any one of us to make. That's a decision for the state school board. So when you direct the question, and I'm not trying to be combative in any way, but the question should be asked of the State Board of Education as a whole, not certainly of just three of us. And that's a discussion that we would have to have separately.
Okay, I'm sorry. I didn't mean to point at the three of you. I just meant you guys seem to have it seems like maybe you had a suggestion, like maybe you had something else that you were hoping would happen. So I was just wondering if there was a.
I understand your point, and I think, and it's well taken, but certainly we don't make those decisions based on just three board members or four even. It's a discussion item, and it's a serious one, because as you've already pointed out, you have been dealing with textbooks that were placed in the classroom 10 years ago, 9 to 10 years ago. And so for that reason, we need to be extra careful, or very careful always actually, in making these decisions as they forward. That's something that we will have to decide. You have certainly done an excellent job in trying to work with what you were presented. But that's the task of the board, and that's certainly not a decision that can be made by just one or two or three board members. And I appreciate your question, and that's a good one. It's a good question.
Sure, I don't guess I didn't think I was asking for a decision. I just was wondering if there was a proposal at all for something else. So I didn't need to say it anymore.
Wait a minute, let me turn that around. I think you made the comment that it would be dependent on the effectiveness of the LEA textbook committee. What do you think the responsibility of you and the state textbook committee is to eliminate books that are not appropriate in our curriculum and high quality standards? What's your responsibility before you pass it on to the LEA?
So I didn't make that comment about the LEA being the responsible party, though I do feel that way, that the LEA should do their research. I do feel like we have a committee and we follow a very similar process as the state. I also believe, because of where we are in math education, that every district in our state, and I'm talking about school districts, not the 8 districts, but every school district, city schools, county schools, operate differently, and the way that they, their philosophy of how math is taught is different because of the resources that they have in their district. And so a curriculum that works in my school district may not work in another school district, because we have math coaches in every building in my school district. And we have PD often in my school district given by the math coaches. So the curriculum that works in my school district may not work in a district next door to me who doesn't have the funds or doesn't have the leadership, math education leadership in their district. So I do believe that the decision The finite decision has to come down to the LEA. My job as a state committee member was to make a list that had good resources that were aligned to the standards and aligned to the math practice standards, which we did.
Good or excellent? There's the terminology. Here's the qualitative analysis. I'm in transition. When you say good, my expectation is good is not having, when you talk about your curriculum, we have a state adopted curriculum, not a Hoover City system.
That's right.
Washington County or Madison City.
That's right.
State adopted curriculum.
That's right.
And we don't need good textbooks. We need excellent textbooks.
Well, I would go back to this, that no textbook is written to be completely comprehensive. You can ask publishers that question. They're going to tell you no textbook is written to be completely comprehensive. And what makes the textbook excellent is the teacher who's using the textbook to teach the students in front of her. So it's the formative assessments that are done, and it's the constant cycle of instruction that happens in the classroom that makes the textbook excellent, and that is kindergarten through 12th grade. And so I would, go ahead and give it.
To piggyback to what Ms. Tate is saying, so there's a difference even across the line with Hoover and Jefferson County. So we don't have math coaches in our district. There are 2 specialists, me and my partner, and we're servicing 32 schools. And so our focus is really talking to the textbook companies saying, what kind of PP are you providing? How long are you providing this PD? Because the 2 of us trying to do 32 schools, it is a real stretch thinking. And so it's not necessarily even just the content as much as it is, we might not have to have as much PD from the textbook company as we do, because we have less people to train our teachers. We're also asking, are we going to get this professional development throughout the adoption? Because when our new teachers come in, we've got to get them trained and ready. Because our partner and I, we really focus on our schools that are lower performance. We have new teachers in every school.
This is Jeff Newman. May I make a comment?
Yes, sir, go ahead. And someone explain to Miss Bianca that
I
she
get-
froze out.
Yeah. My point in this is I'm a local superintendent sitting down here, and I get a textbook list that's been vetted by the committee, adopted by the State Board of Education, and there's books on there that may just cover 3/4 of the course of study of the standards in that book. I just don't understand why we put the weak ones on there. You know, regardless of professional development and everything else. You know, I mean, I've been in education 40 years here for level teaching and everything else, so I understand this process. But I didn't realize, or I didn't really know, or I don't know why, that we actually put the weak ones on the list, unless you have to somehow by law. And if we do that, we should communicate that to the local system, that this book does not cover all the standards in our course of study, or this book does something else. That's nothing to do with the committee or anything else. I'm just saying that communication to the local LEAs, they really need to understand that when that list comes to them, don't take it for granted, because we're sending stuff down there that may not be good textbooks for.
Well, I think that's what we needed to kind of the information on the from the committee that we had proposed to do, that in the case of the full level, the only books that we are talking about passing along to LEAs that are not what we consider upper tier are those finance. And the only reason that we would do that is because there aren't any other books. Those are the only 2.
Yeah.
And we would rather
I
have.
understand it, but some of those books still are meet our standards better than others. You know, how you rank them, you know, over here. I'm not talking about those 2 that the new courses like that, but I totally understand what you're saying about that. That could be to the side. You know, this course, this is the only thing we have available. and it covers about half of the content standards, whatever. But I'm talking about the rest of the list, the whole rest of the list, you know. Because, you know, I'm from a rural system, but there is we got principals coming in lunchroom right now, they're not even any subsidies. So the least we can do is offer the best textbooks we can get, because like you say, it may be 8 years before you get another one.
Well, and at the high school level, I don't think we have any others other than those two that are in that lower tier that we're, all the other resources rated very well. And again, I think very clear communication. I agree with you absolutely. We need to know that these have been passed along because they were the only two books submitted, and we are aware that we have to supplement. But as far as, you know, your point about why would we do that otherwise, at the high school level, I don't believe that we are.
All right, well, thank you very much, and thank you, Mr. Newman. Dr. Davis would like to add a comment, please.
I just want to share, I think, some of the bigger picture of where we have discussed those high-quality instructional materials at the state level. And so what we looked at, and have looked at with these ladies, is those additional criteria that we would look at. And when you look at, I just looked at Curate, which is in Massachusetts, Louisiana's. When you look at what they've laid out, and there's one other state, I'm sorry, that's what we would like to do with the rubric, the two rubrics, that it's not a, you pick based on not just strong, weak, moderate, not a number, but if it does this. For example, rigor. When you look at rigor, that is using that academic vocabulary, and if the book that or the instructional material that I'm ranking, if I look at it and it is defined plus, minus, then that is weak on the rubric that I have put together, that these ladies have looked at, and you can change. But it takes those two, it takes the other states and what they're doing, so that if I have something like Louisiana is the one that, while it has that tier 3, it also tells you why. So it might be that 25% of the standards are the only ones that, it only covers that. So that information becomes what you look at as part of this process. What it also has done, from what the other states tell us, is then those publishers rise to what you expect. So we put those two other areas that go beyond the standards and the mathematical practices that they've already done, but it's very specific as to what I'm looking for that says, well, does this book have the rigor that is expected? So it's not just, yes, I think it does, or there's more. So I wanted to just clarify that would be the process that they would use for these other areas. So we're not changing what they've already done, but extending.
Well, and I want to say, I think we need to make sure that we hold our publishers responsible. We don't need any watered-down curriculum because they're writing, say, to Texas that adopts statewide, and they said, well, we'll just tweak a few things and Alabama will accept it. I want them to start looking at us like, whoa, when we go to Alabama, they're going to hold our feet to the fire. We better make sure it gets at least 98 to 100% of their course of studies, or we just won't go to Alabama. We just cannot anymore accept things that our kids do not deserve. And I am feeling very strongly that we don't need watered-down curriculum. We don't need to be accepting things that are not the best, because we keep finding out what's happening, and our kids scoring low is not acceptable anymore. My soapbox.
Now, can I say a few things?
You go right ahead.
You can't jump on that soapbox. Okay, I sympathize with the time pressures, and that when the ones that have used textbooks for over 10 years, that's too long. And I hate that. I'm hoping Amsty could supplement, could help you out in this time. Schoology, we've got that going. Hopefully that we can supplement and help you with this. Innovation, yes, for finite math, if there were only 2 submitted and they were both weak, then perhaps we could look at the college level. They offer finite math in college. I took it. Can we not, like you say, you could only evaluate what was submitted. You have no control over that, so I'm not blaming the committee. I think y'all did an incredibly strong job, so thank you so much. But we know they offer it in college. Why did we not look at that? Why didn't the publishing companies do that? Can we go back to them? I don't know these answers, but I'm just asking, maybe we can be innovative, and at worst case, maybe we could supplement, write our own. Minnesota, right? They write their own math curriculum. Yes, it would be horribly long, tedious, expensive work to do. But in cases where we get low quality submissions for a class, that's hard for me to take. I don't want our children to suffer from that. And so maybe we do have to do something not at the local level, but at the state level. That's what we're here for. Okay, to supplement some of what some of the others have said, most of mine, when I started asking them questions, said that when they get a list, and Jeff, I think you referred to this, that when they get a list from the State Department, approved by the state board of textbooks, they assume that everyone on there is high quality. They assume they're starting from high quality. One of my systems said that their teachers, sometimes not even in the subject matter, that usually 4 to 5 teachers are asked to serve on a textbook committee. They're doing 2 afternoons of PD, and they have to decide on textbooks for their school. But they assume that the list that they're giving, any one they choose is going to be high quality. So I'm not a math expert. I'm not an education expert. So what do? I go to my school systems and I ask all 21 systems in my district, what do you need from us? How can we best serve you? Number one, absolutely was alignment with our courses of study, with ACAP, with the ACT. They said, do not send us any books that are not aligned. They actually wanted, Dr. Boyd, you'll have a stroke over this, they wanted each lesson in the textbook associated with a specific standard. And if there were not the standard covered, they wanted us to submit a lesson that was covering the standard. They want detailed rubric ratings, not just a few scores, but detailed rubric ratings and scores. Separate lists for comprehensive and supplemental. All weak text should be rejected. Only, like you said, if they were the only ones submitted, okay. But they're not happy with it, but they got that. Some schools wanted only the top 5 ranked for every grade. You guys would understand this much more than me. They said DOK. I had to say, what is DOK? What is it, depth of knowledge? They want very high depth of knowledge. They said most textbooks now that they are using do not have adequate depth of knowledge. But the ACAP and the ACT asked these rigorous questions. Their current texts don't have them. So they said they wanted that rated on a rubric. What is the level? How many of the questions do that? They wanted parent friendly. At least something that was parent friendly in these texts. You know, can parents understand? One school said they wanted dashboards that were distinct for schools, parents, student, class. They asked about the assessments. What type of assessments do they have? Formative. They want to know what tech features are free. They said be careful with these publishing companies because a lot of times they'll have all these add-ons that are very expensive. They want to know what's free. They want support for EL, dyscalculia. Didn't know what that was, but they want dyscalculia, special needs provisions listed. They want research-based homework problems, not just busy work. They want a digital component that will generate individual learning plans for individual students. I don't know if Schoology does that, but that's what they want from their math. They want an emphasis on math discourse. The best practices, they appreciated that you took that seriously. But emphasis on math discourse and strong core, strong tier 1, tier 2, tier 3 with off-level support and high-level DOK. And so I know I'm mentioning a lot of things, But this is what the school systems, at least in my area, this is what they said, these were the items that are important to them. And I felt like it was perhaps instructive for y'all to know. So when you present your rubric, they don't want just 2 scores. They want all this information listed, and they also, I was not aware of this, they said that the in-service centers have already contacted them, that the publishing companies have set dates to come in January and do their dog and pony shows about all the math textbooks. The school system said they want these rubrics before they go into those in-service center dog and pony shows. They want to have this information so they know better which questions to ask of the publishers. So I feel like it's up to us, if we're going to stick to that January date, we need to provide that information to these school systems so they go in with their questions. They go in prepared and researched. So I'll hush now, I'll get off my soapbox.
Absolutely, you made some really good point, and your point goes to the fact that each district is unique. They have indigenous and unique characteristics, so one district wants all this particular thing, another district wants another thing. And the depth of knowledge, well, we fixed this because we've added a scoring rubric on that goes with the regular usability. And we also added a part of the component that we heard from others talking about everything is going digital now, so there needs to be a category for doing the digital, plus the category with the comments. A lot of those things that you mentioned, you may have mentioned 6 or 7 things. If we were to do that, we would have a rubric with 10 different columns, which would almost be impossible for a committee to do that.
But they're comments.
That's right, which is why the committee agreed that we'd have a comment section, we'd have comments for each individual textbook, trying to touch up on the highs or the lows of the textbooks, so that the district can make a more informed decision.
And I can send you, I summarized like
Absolutely.
what they said.
So I'm thinking,
Ms. West?
I've waited patiently and listened because I wanted to take it all in. I just have one question regarding the additional depth of our rubric. It seems to me that over and over again we've discussed professional development. Is the data there for each textbook on if that company offers PD, how much, is there an additional cost? That seems to me that that might help the locals select between one book or another book if they felt that they were going to have that additional opportunity for professional development. And that's my only question.
typically, it's in the best interest of the textbook company to provide as much professional development as the district requests, because if they don't, then they're deemed as having not so good service and it would not be considered in the future. As a former textbook coordinator of a school district, anytime we requested professional development, we received it. But the point was made early on, and it's so true, the textbook is only as good as the end user or the capability of a teacher to implement the textbook to fidelity. So that being said, it is truly important for us to do that.
Dr. Warren, I want to add also, let's not focus always on the responsibility of the teacher. Sometimes the teacher's ability to adjust and adapt is only as good as the product, the textbook we provide. It goes both ways. As a former superintendent, I can tell you, when you deal with a wide range of textbooks in the area, even Bonnie will look at the difference in Elmont and Gladstone County and other schools. You have a variety of teachers. You have to provide a quality textbook if you want to have an expected outcome with the parent involved and the student involved. You can't just pass along and say, well, it depends on the individual teacher and what your kid gets. I think our role right now is adopting quality textbooks. I'm not satisfied that we're eliminating and we're determining what is the best quality textbooks we want to spend Alabama State textbook money on.
So what we'll do is
say it depends on the teacher. That's not adequate to me. That's not in our decision making.
As a group, what we'll do is we'll regroup, textbook committee, myself, Sean Stevens, and Dr. Townsend, and we'll have a discussion, and we'll report to the board via email or some type of way of what we come up with.
Are there any other board questions? Okay, thank you, and ladies, thank you so much. The whole point of bringing us together is discussion and to ask questions and to get your input, but we do want you to know that we value the hard work and dedication that it took into this. But we also want you to know we're fighting for what's best for all the kids in the state of Alabama, and we appreciate all of your hard work. Thank you. Okay. Next, and if y'all need to leave us, we understand, and thank you kindly, not board members. Let's move on to item 3, which is discussion of the Alabama State Board of Education meeting and work session dates.
Go ahead.
I'm sorry.
All right.
The only thing I wanted you always know that our July is always, of course, on a Tuesday. But please go down to November, where we have to move the date because it would fall normally on Veterans Day. So we would have to go from the Thursday to the Wednesday. I just wanted to point that out to y'all. I'm sorry. Oh, I'm sorry. Was that all I needed?
That's all. That's the only thing. So the board, next month, we bring this to y'all to approve. If you see any questions, let us know. But otherwise, that's what we would propose.
Okay, so that was item 3. Item 4, we're going on to the announcement concerning the intent to adopt new Alabama administrative code. Dr. Mackey, I think we have...
It's a long section. It's not as detailed as it looks like it would be. Dr. Boyd actually has this presentation. He may, if he's tired of talking, I will... I think I can do it, but Dr. Boyd, I'll turn it to you if you want to go through this. This has to do with, obviously, teaching standards, but it's also closely tied to what we're doing with new teacher evaluation system.
Absolutely. So, Mr. Creel is going to bring the slide up, and we'll go ahead and get started with an advance of that, Mr. Creel. So, just want to briefly discuss the history, as Dr. Mackey said, is related to our new teacher observation tool, the tool that we're creating now. And I'd like to share with you the projected timeline. So, brief history. The Alabama Board of Education adopted the Alabama Quality Teaching Standards. This is part of the Governor's Task Force on Quality Teaching Standards. This was done as part of the teacher education chapter in our administrative code. And that was back in 2007. In 2009, the board also adopted a resolution to replace PEPI. PEPI was replaced with Educate Alabama. And this was an observation tool aligned to those particular standards, the one, the AQTS. In 2015, the Board of Education replaced AQTS with the Alabama Core Teaching Standards in the Educator Preparation chapter of the Administrative Code. So we have it in the preparation chapter of the administrative code, but we don't have it in the professional development section there. So we're not changing any of the standards. All we want to do is add it to that particular location. So we'll go to the next slide, in which what we're trying to do today is propose to you that we add the new Alabama Core, not new, but Alabama Core Teaching Standards. This would be adopted and be a component of 290-4-3.03. It serves as a companion of the 290-3-3.03. They're basically the same thing. One is in the teacher preparation section. The other one is related to teacher professional development and teacher evaluation. And the reason why that is so important, this fall we'll be using a new tool. This new tool will be our observation tool that will replace the Educate Alabama system here. Will be able to capture information to meet the guidelines associated with ESSA. Next slide, Mr. Creel. In order for us to do this, this is a proposed timeline. Today I'm making the recommendation to you guys on December 10th. We'll announce the intent to adopt the core teaching standards. And on February the 11th, We'll actually adopt the core teaching standards, and because of the way the Code of Alabama reads in terms of getting something passed, it will not go into effect until April the 13th, 2021. Again, no new standards, exact same thing, we just place it in the location that it needs to be placed in so we can have our new evaluation tool in place, our observation tool in place. Any questions?
And that'll be next month?
Next month.
Yes.
We would announce the intent to adopt next month, and then you would not vote on the final adoption until February.
And then after the April date, when would the tool be applied to our teachers?
Good question. August of 2021.
August of 2021.
Absolutely, yes. And we're actually in the pilot phase of the new tool, so we're testing it now, the tool, to make sure that it's valid and reliable.
Will you provide to the board a brief executive summary of how the pilot goes?
Absolutely.
That would be good to have.
Yes.
Prior to making this decision.
Yes.
This is Dr. Richardson.
Yes,
Has
ma'am.
it been determined when the other administrators will be trained on the new instrument?
No, ma'am, not at this particular point.
But they will be trained?
Yes, they'll be trained on it, yes. The instruments will only be used for, I misunderstood you, this instrument will only be used for the teachers. The administrators will not use that tool, they'll continue to use Lead Alabama. But yes, they will be trained, absolutely.
No, I mean the administrators who will be evaluating the teachers will be trained on the instrument. That's what I meant.
Yes, absolutely. Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Boyd. Before we go on to item 5, 6, 7, 8, which I think we could sort of blend together, Dr. Mackey, did you want to make a correction about something?
Yeah, I sure do. And so you're right, 5, 6, 7, and 8, if you just look at those are pretty, or 5, 6, and 7, I think.
I'm sorry.
Pretty close. 8 is a recognition for Computer Science Week in December. I went back, Mrs. Bell asked a question, and she was right. So earlier, we were going through the course of study. I actually was in the wrong place in my head. What I was giving you was the definition for the textbook committee, not the course of study committee. Two separate committees to do two separate things. So the course of study committee, and Jason was kind enough, he went and pulled this for me at lunch, but there are 28 members of the course of study committee. It is set up a little different because the course of study committee comes through the board. So there's, I won't go into all of it, but there's an elementary teacher from each of the 7 congressional districts, and then there are secondary teachers from each of the congressional districts, but we use current congressional districts, whatever the current congressional district is, for the course of study. For the textbook committees, we use the congressional districts from the 1990 census, but for course of study, we do not. So it is a little bit confusing, and I said it the wrong way before. And then we have members at large, 3 members from education, higher institutions of higher education, and then 7 that are appointed by the governor. Also, for courses of study, those local educator positions, the 14, 1 elementary, 1 high school, have to be recommended by their local superintendent also. So they go through a recommendation process before they come to the board. And we do still have, again, task force members that just fill in if there's a place missing. But that's the 28 members that go through it. And I think, I'm not sure, I don't want to speak too far out, but I'm not sure the course of study members actually have to be confirmed by they do. They have to be confirmed by the Senate too. So the governor's appointees shall have expertise in the area, and they have to be confirmed by the Senate the same as the textbook committee members do. So it is a little bit confusing, but the main difference, and she was making the point, she was absolutely right, is that with courses of study, they come from the current congressional districts. With textbook committee, they come from the congressional districts is set in 1998. And of course, we're all keeping our fingers crossed that when the census is done, but when the county's all concluded, that we still have 7 congressional districts. And if not, we'll have to see what the legislature wants to do about that and how it might be adjusted. And also I have for the ones of you who are here, the evaluation, my evaluation. So Mr. Moore, he's gone already, but he put all these together, had a discussion with the governor the day before yesterday, and told her we would give these to you today. And what we'll do, I can email it also, the electronic version, but we will also mail this to the board members that are not with us today. We're going to mail you the big spreadsheet. You'll see it's on a double-sized sheet of paper. And what we will do then in December, y'all will do an official vote on a evaluation. But you see here the numbers. You'll have to go back. What we're going to do also, I'll send you the questions again if you've lost your set of questions. But you'll have to take the question and then you can look at it and see where each one is with the question. And then I will also come back and I know we're changing instruments next year, but I'm going to also come back and do a little summary with some of these areas for some personal and professional growth areas for next year based on these scores. But I'm also going to tie it to more of the new one too, since we'll be using something different next year. So you'll see that'll be coming out. And the other thing is to let you know we've gone through, Dr. Boyd helped me with this too, we went through the questions that we used to ask about superintendent and principal evaluations from PEPI, and now have gotten that down to 20-something-ish, and we'll share those with the board and with the committee and let you go through them then. And well, I mean, we reword them a little bit so it doesn't say the principal does this, but basically as an instrument that we would use for legislative leadership, for associations, and for business people to get their input in things. And I think you'll be real pleased. I started to do that today, but I was a little worried about confusing next year's instrument with this year's. And so I thought it'd be better to go ahead and get this done, and then I'll just send that to you before December. It does not, because that's not, I mean, you've adopted an evaluation instrument, and that's just a data collection mechanism. So it really doesn't require, like an official vote of the board, but at the same time, we want to make sure everybody felt good about it, because if people say, no, this is not what we want, that we would fix that. And my thinking is that we would want to send that out next year around the 1st of October, maybe even September if you want, to think about, because you want to get it back and have time then to look at that data before you fill out the instrument, I think. So, but you'll have it. I'll just go ahead and get it to you, certainly before the December meeting, and you can look that over. But again, I tried to get it down to 20 questions. It's not quite to 20 yet, so it might be a little more. And then you might want to whittle it down some more and say, no, that's too much to ask of these, people. But we've also, there's simple statements, and basically also a 1 through 5 rubric where they can, and some of them won't know some of the information. Yes, Dr. Reynolds.
You're going to email us the tabulation that you got from
yes, sir.
the governor's office?
Yes, sir.
Who are safe at home and not taking our lives at stake and your COVID.
Yes, sir. I'm going to email it to you and send you a hard copy. I will do both.
Thank you.
Yes, sir.
Dr. Mackey, are we preparing, or are you preparing a packet of information like with this information for our 2 new board members so that they understand the instrument next year, since it is very different, and sort of where we finish this year? Do you think that would be helpful?
I think that's very helpful. We have a date set, the first Monday in December. The 2 of them are coming in, and we're going to do a new member orientation with them, and we will add that. In fact, we were working this morning on our agenda, so we'll add that as part of that agenda. That's a very good idea.
I know when I was new, I had no idea what the instrument was going to look like. So it might be helpful to give them a few months to digest
Yes,
all
ma'am.
that.
And we also, since you brought it up, we also were, one of the things we discussed this morning was getting with you and Dr. Stewart and say, now, what are the things you wish we had gone over in your orientation?
That's a good idea.
So if you'll be thinking about that over the next week, we would like to know that as we put the agenda together.
And you can't ask for a year's
I
experience.
have a lot to add.
Okay, Dr. Stewart, I'm serious, we need to know about how we can best help them. And,
No, you all have been wonderful. Now, is December my last meeting?
no, ma'am, be January. You'll serve through the January meeting.
You can't leave so fast.
Not quite that
Good
quick.
try, good try. Uh-oh, she just left us. So did we deal with these issues? We're good to go?
I think so, unless y'all have any questions on those. We had, we'll have 3 ed prep programs, I think. Sanford and Troy and USA. Do you want to look at those quickly and see if there's any, of course, you guys questions between now and then.
No, we're good. We just hope.
Dr. Mackey, the
Yes, ma'am.
Sanford and Troy are 2 of the institutions. Remember, there were 7 institutions that were questioned. Only 4 of them had programs that are impacted by the Alabama Literacy Act. You've already cleared UAH. Sanford and Troy are 2 more of the 4. And Faulkner hopefully will be ready soon, so that will
Okay.
take care of that.
So that's what this is doing, it's clearing that up.
And then South Alabama's new programs.
Good, okay.
Thank you.
Sounds good. All right, on that note, have a safe trip going home. Thank you for all coming with us, and good evening. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye.
So, let me ask you this. So, I've talked to these two ladies.
I don't know, I'm trying out their names, maybe it's like, I mean, you know, I feel like they, I'm on it now, I feel like they should be like, oh, I just say, but you know, I just align, I just like to align organizations, and then, you know.
Everybody but me and Jessica, because I was